Hello and welcome to Queer News Tonight. This is the world's first and only LGBTQ+ daily evening television news, broadcasting live and then available on demand on all smart televisions, including Roku, Apple TV, Android TV, Amazon Fire TV, YouTube, and Facebook. It is time to queer up the news. It is Tuesday, May 30th, 2023. We are literally live and out of the closet and into the headlines. So many of your important stories we are going to tell this evening on Queer News Tonight.
This is the world's first live daily LGBTQ evening news show, literally out of the closet and into the headlines on Queer News Tonight with Al Ferguson.
I'm out South Florida's senior reporter, John Hayden. Al has the night off. This evening, we bring you the news of and perspective representing the LGBTQ+ community from South Florida, America, and across our planet.
This is the world's first and only unedited live LGBTQ+ evening news show. Whatever happens unique in LGBTQ+ news, you will see it and hear it.
Hotspots Magazine, Happening Out Television Network, is a nonprofit 501c3 media company in the same model of PBS and NPR, but designed for the LGBTQ+ community. Our mission is to support the 10 pillars of our LGBTQ+ community. We want to inform and educate the key issues of our Black community: Latino, lesbian, trans, students, youth, seniors, HIV/AIDS healthcare, business, social justice, and faith. Help us support our community.
We are part of one of the largest LGBTQ+ media companies in America, Hotspots Magazine and Happening Out Television Network.
Our magazine is celebrating 38 years of the LGBTQ+ experience, and our television, news, talk, and entertainment shows support our mission to educate the LGBTQ+ and broader community.
Let's begin by welcoming tonight's panel. And up first, we have television's Chef Josie. Hey, Chef Josie. She is a Bravo TV top chef and the master of popular champagne and oyster celebration restaurant Bubbles and Pearls in the heart of famous Wilton Drive. She is also known by her alter ego, DJ Lady Snack Daddy. Welcome, Chef Josie. It's great to have you.
Oh, thank you, thank you. You know how much I love being here, and I'm so excited because this weekend I'm heading out to Orlando, and so for all the ladies watching tonight, it's not too late. A lot of the parties are sold out. The hotel rooms are definitely sold out, but you can come and party with the best of us. Girls in Wonderland 2023, it's gonna be lit. Okay.
And is there any truth to the rumor that your hotel room, or she's Chef Josie, your hotel suite will have a sign over it that says Bubbles and Girls?
Hey man, well that's the I guess you could say the under off menu.
Oh,
okay.
Okay.
All right, so we're doing off menu here, but now let's welcome next welcome our anchor Paul Thomas. He is currently the chairman of the LGBTQ+ advisory committee to the city of Miami Beach, on the board of directors for the Point Foundation and the endorsement committee for SAVE. He has over 30 years of experience in the healthcare and educational fields, specializing in AIDS, HIV treatments, as well as an activist and advocate for marginalized communities. Locally, he works with many of our nonprofits and FQHCs, providing a wide range of services. Good evening, Paul.
Good evening, Chef Josie. That party sounds like fun. Speaking of healthcare, if it's June, it's Pride Month. If you have any events going on, get in touch with me, Facebook, Instagram, my phone number, whatever. It's all low. We'd love to bring our mobile clinic to you, rebuild your relationship with healthcare, get your free bivalent vaccine, and then any other care that you may want to talk about. But I'm looking forward to an exciting Pride Month. So let's welcome now anchor Amy McGrotty. Amy was a real estate attorney for almost 30 years before she transitioned into real estate sales and is now known as the real estateologist, which I've learned is not a real word, but she's making it work. She works alongside John Castelli and Rod Blacklock at Castelli Real Estate Services in Wilton Manors as part owner and residential and commercial sales. Amy studied and played taiko drums for a decade. She practices bass guitar in the privacy of her home and is a blacksmith hobbyist at the Guild in Pompano Beach and in the privacy of her shop. She's very private. She has previously provided pro bono legal services to people in need and now serves on the board of the Broward Realtors Charitable Foundation and the Outshine LGBTQ+ Film Festival. Welcome, Amy.
Thanks, Paul. Okay, so now let's welcome anchor Jeff Oliverio. Jeff is a founder and treasurer of the Hollywood LGBTQ+ Council, a community-based organization that unites the LGBTQ+ community in Greater Hollywood with a focus on life, government, and business. The council launched My Hollywood Pride in 2022, and their third annual event is scheduled for January 2024. Jeff is returning as co-chair for the upcoming 2023 National LGBTQ Task Force Gala, which is being held October 14th, 2023 in Miami Beach. The National LGBTQ Task Force is celebrating their 50th anniversary, and their events, including Winter Party Festival, have given back more than $3.3 million to LGBTQ community organizations in South Florida. Welcome, Jeff.
Thank you for having me. I wanted to take a moment as a member of the Hollywood community and the Hollywood LGBTQ Council to recognize the victims that were involved yesterday in a mass shooting on Hollywood Beach. The Hollywood Council advocates for the voices and perspectives of LGBTQ+ people, and we believe that gun violence also impacts our community, and we stand to ask for you to urge your legislators to pass sensible gun control legislation to protect our community and our allies. And our prayers are with the victims, of course, and we hope that everyone recovers from the incident yesterday, at least physically. We are the reporters for Queer News Tonight, and this evening we begin with the queer headlines. The LGBTQ+ community in South Florida and across America is diverse. Our community across the world is vast, and here are the bullet points of the queer news for today, Tuesday, May 30th.
Well, let's begin by queering up the worldview. Turkey's anti-LGBTQ+ Erdoğan takes aim at LGBT forces in election victory speech. The president, who has held the position since 2014, was just elected to a third five-year term over the weekend. The president went on to say that, speak out against our LGBTQ+ community, saying, quote, "In our culture, family is sacred. No one can interfere. We will strangle anyone who dares to touch it," end quote. At another rally before the election, he said, LGBTQ in Turkey will not emerge. At another electoral rally, he affirmed his party will, quote, "never be pro-LGBT because family is sacred to us," end quote. Similar to the statements he made over the weekend after winning re-election. Throughout his whole campaign, the president put a heavy emphasis on striking down the LGBTQ+ community, seeking support from his Islamist base to win re-election. Many of his speeches accused opposition of undermining family values and being infiltrated by powerful LGBTQ+ networks, sometimes even hinting they are being run by foreign paymasters, framing the queerness as cultural terrorism of the West. Anti-LGBTQ+ sentiment has been on the rise there for a number of years, where pride parades are banned and queer people report feeling afraid of what's to come in the future. And, you know, it looked like he wasn't going to win re-election. Originally, the polls showed he was not even going to. This was a runoff election. The original one was about 2 or 3 weeks ago, and it didn't even look like it would go to a runoff. Then it did, because neither main candidate got 50%, and now it looks like he has won again. And Turkey has always been one of those countries that sits in the middle. We can't just say, screw you about LGBT, because they are sort of that NATO buffer that goes between, you know, an open civilized society and the old Eastern Bloc, now essentially just Russia's domination. So we can't ignore them, but we have to look at these authoritarian democracies that are continuing to come for us.
Yeah, the storyline is, again, authoritarian democracies coming, or authoritarian dictators coming against the LGBTQ plus community as their weapon of kind of mass destruction. And they're using the cultural wars, similar to what we're doing here in our own country, with authoritarian leaders that are trying to rise to power here in our own state.
Yeah.
So, you know, the comparisons couldn't be any more clear.
Yeah. We were talking earlier about COVID. In COVID, we talked a lot about NATO. And NATO has actually expanded, right, because of the war in the Ukraine. Mm-hmm. And Turkey's a member of NATO. And now it's really time for NATO to step up. It is unacceptable in 2023 that a president of any country can use our community the way that he's targeting. He's basically putting targets on the backs of every LGBTQ person in Turkey.
Yeah, using words like strangle and we're attacking their family unit.
Yeah, it's not acceptable, and I'm really expecting NATO to come down heavy on Turkey. His whole election is suspect because the way elections run over there, even though they call it a democracy, when you're in power, you're in charge of the media. So he had an unlimited amount of media, and his opponents had 36 minutes total in all the time that they've been running.
Oh, really?
To have anything put anywhere, which is, they're pretty sure that's the only reason why he won, is because he controlled all the narrative and all the language. And he said, like, we're making this war against gay people, you need to go vote for me or they're going to come take over the country. Yeah. And he used those two things to win. That's not a democracy.
No.
Right? And so this is not acceptable. NATO needs to step up and step up quick.
Yeah.
I mean, the way that I look at it, you know, I love how everyone pins us against the wall as this very dangerous community. And, you know, we're coming for your families. And, you know, on one side of that conversation, I'm sitting there going, that's right. You know, and you're like, you know, be afraid of us. But at the same time, you know, as tough as we are as a community, like you said, you know, this is putting a target on the backs of our European, you know, all of our neighbors, our brothers and sisters and our neighbors across the ocean. And we're looking at this because here, I mean, we see how it plays out here, right? And Black trans lives and the deaths, and they're piling up. In some of these countries, like Turkey, for instance, you know, people can just disappear. And so this is, it's a human rights issue now.
Right.
And I think that everyone should have their eyes on Turkey.
And the other thing, just to throw in real quick, what is this thing with families acting like they're the only ones with families? I have a really big family.
Yeah.
Why do they act like they're the only ones that, you know, and they love me to death? Why do they, he's like, they're coming to take our family? What are you talking about? We all have families.
Yeah.
Like, we don't want your family.
Well, it's state-sponsored hate, state-sponsored discrimination. And before we move on, I just think it's worth pointing out that LGBT has been an oppressed class for centuries.
Yeah.
The Jews have been an oppressed class for millennia. It wasn't like Hitler came to power and all of a sudden said, Jews, that's who we're going to pick.
Yes.
Jews were already looked out at by the side of the eyes of Christians, Catholicism, other religions, Islam, certainly. And then the state came in, the German state came in and riled everybody up and said, these are the people to blame. And eventually we're like, yes, go ahead and attack them. But in the beginning, it was, we're not going to protect them and you can do whatever you want. And that's what's happening in Turkey. That's what's happening here in America. There are state-sponsored where they say, you know what, we're going to put into law, these people aren't as good. These people are lesser. And then, you know what's going to happen? We're already seeing it. Increased attacks on trans community, increased attacks on the LGBT community, increased attacks on people of color community. So this is a playbook that is not at all new. And it's something when we look at Turkey, we need to say, okay, how much is this mirroring America as we go forward?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, now we're going to queer up gay culture. San Francisco may become America's first UNESCO World Heritage City. San Francisco Mayor London Breed unveiled her roadmap to downtown's future, which lays out strategies and initiatives in response to current economic challenges and sets a new vision for the role of downtown in San Francisco's economy. The mayor's downtown plan aims to reinvigorate the city and reposition San Francisco as the Bay Area's economic hub and a global anchor for commerce. When a city is designated a World Heritage Site, it rises above the category of a local or national landmark. It means it's something important to all of humanity. The idea of San Francisco as a World Heritage Site has just moved one step closer to realization. Key stakeholders, including Rich Hillis, San Francisco Planning Director, and Diane Matsuda, President of the Historic Preservation Commission, have agreed to launch a task force to pursue the nomination. Carolyn Montiel, the former director of the nonprofit San Francisco Heritage, said we should also highlight the LGBTQ+ history and culture of San Francisco. By doing so, it would be the only World Heritage Site in the world with an LGBTQ+ theme. The World Heritage Committee has already been carrying out an analysis of where there are gaps on its list, which could end up giving San Francisco a natural advantage. You know, I was doing a little research on this. I found it a little fascinating. So UNESCO, I'm like, what does that even mean, right? It means the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization. And when I looked up these sites and what it means, they're all over the world. And there are countries like Afghanistan and that has World Heritage Sites because it's really about the history of humanity and pretty fascinating. In America, most of the World Heritage Sites are national parks. They're things that, you know, have been around for a long, long time. I found it really interesting for San Francisco that they would choose a community of human beings as part of the thing that sets them apart. And I really think it's fantastic, especially on the back of our last conversation, right, about Turkey, that no, that's not really the way this thing goes. That's not really the way this looks like in today's time, and it's not the way it's going to look historically. Yeah. Historically, we need to give the LGBT community its rightful place out in front. It is our role, at least that's the way I was raised in the LGBTQ community. That's what we do as LGBTQ people in every civilization is we help move society forward. Yeah. And so we absolutely should be out in front in San Francisco. And I hope that they win.
Yeah. Yeah. And San Francisco is rich in gay history, LGBTQ plus history. Rich. Yeah. You know, and Mecca it was when I was coming up, you know.
Yeah, it's one of those things that it sort of took root in this. San Francisco's always been an awesome city, even before it was founded. It was just awesome. But it's one of those cities that gay culture has really become embedded in, and they're sort of a model for how cities who want to put a spotlight on their LGBTQ plus population can be inclusive.
Yeah.
So this just sort of speaks to the expertise of your field. What role does real estate and real estate agents play in helping set and keep a vibe for a community? Because there's a lot of consternation in Wilton Manors right now about building a medium rise on the drive, and that Wilton could lose the identity it's carved out for itself over the past 35 plus years. What can we do as a community, and how can we do it from a professionals? Because real estate's really where it all begins.
It is, but there are so many rules surrounding this profession against steering and things like that, which we needed in this country, that we can't steer, and we can only follow what the community does. So it's very important for the members of every community here, Wilton Manors, San Francisco, New York, to get out and be heard and attend those commission meetings. They're fabulous, by the way. I think people think they're boring, but I think they're fabulous.
If you see the beginning of this story, though, this is a business that San Francisco needs. I mean, San Francisco is on the verge. There's an article there in the midst of this doom loop that they're calling it, which is the empty office buildings, which are leading to less people in the city core, which are the BART is potentially on the verge of collapse in 3 years. It's 40% of the ridership since before COVID. And so the LGBTQ community could save San Francisco, again, making it San Francisco needs to transform from a center of business. The technology industry is probably not going back to an office, at least on any kind of consistent basis. So they need to transform the city into tourism as being a major component of the city, which of course it always was before, but the technology industry was driving real estate prices and commercial real estate and all those other things. So this is not just let's honor our community, which is great, but listen, let's also use our community to say, well, guess what? We bring a lot of spending power, and we want LGBTQ people to come to this city to learn about their history. So it's a great story.
One of my favorite cities here in the United States. I've lived in almost all of the great cities you'd want to live in, New York and then San Francisco for 3.5 years. And I will say this, I hear that doom loop because on my way out of San Francisco, I was already seeing it happening, and that was before COVID. And, one of the most vibrant, it's culturally just so rich in arts and entertainment and food and culture and nature and I mean it's one of the most progressive cities I've ever been in, the most European experience here in the United States, and I had to leave because it did get too expensive, and I was away from my family. So why would I stay in San Francisco and be away from my family and pay New York prices when I could just come home, which was a little bit cheaper here in South Florida, right? But one of the things that I recognize is we have always done it in every little neighborhood I've ever lived in. It started with our LGBTQ plus community coming in and seeing the diamond in the rough and investing love and nurturing and holding it. And then, of course, we get moved out of our communities because after we beautify it and make it something fabulous. But what I think that you're so on point right now, Jeff, with this, if our LGBT plus community from around the world can see this bid for San Francisco, and we all go there and invest in reviving this city, then that city that is rich in our history already becomes our town. And thank you, Mayor London, for seeing and having the vision to bring this city to the forefront. So, wow. So let's next we're gonna queer up the sports. After Pride Night Backlash, LA Dodgers announced Christian Faith and Family Day. On May 26, Los Angeles Dodgers announced a relaunch of another themed day at Dodger Stadium, Christian Faith and Family Day. Following the uproar over an upcoming Pride Night event featuring a group of queer and trans nuns, the announcement came after controversy over the team's decision to invite then uninvited and then re-invite the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence, a drag group that raises money for LGBTQ plus causes, to its Pride Night on June 16th. The Dodgers had initially intended to recognize the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence with a, quote, Community Hero Award, but rescinded the invite on May 17th after Catholic organizations called out the troupe as a, quote, blatantly perverted, sexual, and anti-Catholic hate group, end quote. The Dodgers then announced its change of heart, saying it was uninviting the group only to flip-flop again after that decision sparked a backlash from LGBTQ plus organizations, including LA Pride, which said it now would not be participating in the 10th annual Pride Night at Dodger Stadium. Sister Unity, a founding member of the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence, said that they were happy to receive the invitation again. Okay, well, it's like ping pong out there in the world, and we're going back and forth. It's like companies they're showing courage by announcing these events and including us in these events. And then they're feeling the pressure of whoever, the moms sitting at the table, the right-wing Christian groups, all these the politicians who are politicizing every single moment of every single day. And then here we are. So what do? We're like, thanks for the invitation again. We don't even like show an attitude. You know, we're not even like, we're not snubbing. We're like, listen, we're here, we're queer, and we're not going anywhere. And the Sisters of Indulgence, of Perpetual Indulgence, I mean, I met those ladies out in San Francisco. So, I mean, they should open my eyes. I get it. You know, some of their stuff is edgy. It pushes the button, and you know, it could be argued whether or not some of their stuff is appropriate for children under the age of. But there's a lot of things in this world that I would like to ask if it's appropriate for children under the age of 6. Or so why are we then now taking this and applying it to just the drag queens? We need to then do a full sweep. If we're really protecting children out here and this is our concern, then let's go ahead and do a full cultural sweep, and let's then our morality sweep even.
Well, first of all, I'm against that because that's what parents should do. First of all, as a parent. Second of all, the Dodgers have really lived up to their name by dodging controversy. So that's really what obviously, whoever works for the Dodgers and their PR department, everyone should be fired. This is a terrible story. And we need to push organizations or companies to have a backbone. Either you support us or you don't support us. There is no like, well, we're going to support you a little bit now, but not in public. Because I think that's a big problem. And the messaging, I'm actually kind of against now we're going to boycott it. Every Pride organization should show up at that game and come out in full force and say, are you going to exclude all of these people from your marketing for ticket sales? Because again, we have a huge community, and if we take our buying power away, you're going to be impacted. And lastly, I'll say tomorrow night is Pride at the Park for the Marlins. So please go out, grab your tickets, go support SAVE. They're going to be there tomorrow night, and come show your pride at the Florida Marlins in Miami.
And just a quick plug for that, Gay Men's Chorus South Florida will be performing the national anthem.
Fantastic.
So yeah,
You know,
so
this
good on them.
sister's story to me is like unbelievable. I've met them too, and they're fantastic. The hypocrisy of a Catholic organization to come out and say they're a little too much. Nobody's worse than the Catholic Church.
Yeah.
Get mad at me if you want.
Not at all.
But nobody's like abused more kids sexually than that organization. I don't even know how they're still open. Any other organization on the planet would have been shut down after 2 kids. They're into tens of thousands in every country all over. It's like, what are you talking about?
And the death of indigenous people.
You're right. And exactly. So it's like, really? You're trying to take a high ground against
and of all places, Los Angeles.
Like drag performers hanging out at a baseball game? That's where you're gonna go? Right. You know what I mean? You don't make this uproar when the priest is like found to have, nobody says anything.
Oh no, it's all nothing to see here.
Yeah, but all of a sudden now you have so much to say. Give me a break. I'm tired of these hypocritical religions. You want to practice whatever you want. You want to believe in whatever you want. It's a free country. You can do that. But this trying to use it as a weapon against people,
and
not acceptable.
Doing that too.
Not acceptable.
Whatever happened to separation of church and state?
Exactly.
There's a lot of that overcross now, which goes against.
And the other thing we have to be careful of, to your point, is that the right wing has decided that what they're trying to do is make Pride not marketable. They're trying to make it something that's a negative.
Yes.
They're trying to make it because they know that companies do, they come out for a lot of different things, not just during Pride Month. And so they're trying to, like with Bud Light, they said, we need to make this Pride thing not something that corporations want to be attached to. Yeah. And so to your point, you're right. Corporations are going to have to decide what side are you going to be on, because they're going to come after everything. They're going to come after everything that says Pride to see how far can they push back.
I mean, look what they're doing to Target right now.
I know, it's ridiculous.
If I see one more TikTok video with someone destroying the merchandise for the Pride merchandise in a Target, I'm like, you guys get a life, get a life.
But it's very dangerous. And it's very dangerous. We need the corporate support. And to your buying power part, I mean, we really need to, enough with the games, enough with sugarcoating, enough with taking our money, but not really taking us as human beings.
And
right?
you know,
and it's like, you have to pick a side, guys.
And I think before we move on to Amy, I think it's worth pointing out that we're not the ones who keep bringing religion into this.
Exactly.
You know, the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence are a comedy group. They are a satire group. They are in no way trying to say they are associated with the Catholic Church. So, so that's what. We didn't ask for the Dodgers to bring back Family and Faith Night or whatever it is. That's not part of us.
We don't even care if you have it.
They're the
but why is it bothering you for Pride Night?
You know? But you know, they were the one. You know, people. You know, it's demonizing. It's you know, okay, well, you know, we'll do the gays, but then we'll also do the anti-gays
for our sins by bringing in a Catholic or group.
Like discriminatory group. And these things are not equally,
and like, you know,
mutually.
Too bad if you're agnostic or you're or you're Muslim or you know you're a Buddhist. You know, what will that night do for you? Absolutely nothing.
I don't know.
Hashtag fail Dodgers.
I don't know who they're playing on Faith and Christianity night, but I know I won't be rooting for the Dodgers that night.
Or Ebba. Okay, so let's.
Go Yankees.
That's right.
Or Marlins.
Go Marlins.
Next, let's queer up entertainment. Melissa McCarthy talks about playing Ursula in The Little Mermaid.
I also love how you brought some of your past comedic life to this, and that you were inspired by drag queens like Divine and bringing some of that energy to Ursula.
I am a huge fan of drag. I always have been. There's a bravado to it and a self-deprecation to it. It's the perfect mix of having full and utter confidence, and also there's some damage there, and it's a cover. And I think in all of the characters, I kind of fall in love with that quality of what's done because of real confidence or what's done to cover. That's exactly the gray area that makes me usually take apart.
Oh my God, I love her. The live-action remake of The Little Mermaid is finally here. Fans got to see Melissa McCarthy portray Ursula, the sea witch, and hear her rendition of the character's iconic song, Poor Unfortunate Souls. On Sunday, Willie Geist asked McCarthy if it was nerve-wracking to showcase her singing skills in the movie. She said, quote, "When I got it, and I knew I was doing it, then I was like, what have you done? Like, what have you possibly done? I have to try to sing perfectly," end quote. She had to overcome that mindset to get comfortable with the character. Her vocal coach challenged her perfectionist attitude bluntly. McCarthy said, quote, "I don't know how to do things if it's not in character." And he's like, "Singing is the same thing." And then it made sense to me. I don't know how to do something in any area perfectly, but I can do it in character, end quote. Doing things in character has always been a comfortable feeling for McCarthy. When she took on the role of Ursula, the bridesmaid star channeled the legendary drag queen Divine, as well as her own drag alter ego. Miss Y for the role.
Amazing.
I love her. That's all I have to say. And I love that she threw props out to our sisters, our drag queen sisters.
Yeah, I went last night. You know, it's funny that we're reporting on this. My wife is a huge Ariel fan, and whenever she's doing karaoke, if you get a chance to watch her do karaoke, she does that A Whole New World. You know, that's the song, right? Okay, but I'm not as big of a fan. Anyways, my wife was dressed as a mermaid last night, and we went down to the Dania Point VIP. That's how I roll, VIP.
Very nice.
Unlimited Slurpees and popcorn, okay, and recliner seats. That's how you do it. But man, it was so great, and you know, Haley Bailey, and she embraced the role. She was great. If you saw the animated version of this, it was just this. It was a perfect live version, IRL. You know, if we're gonna get cool here with the kids, but the IRL version of this, it was like really, it was brilliant. And even Well, I have some other ideas, but I'm not going to tell you. You can hit me up on my Instagram, and I'll DM me. Slide into my DMs. I can tell you what you can.
If you can get through those DMs, DMs getting crowded.
Well, I tell you,
don't do it this weekend.
Ursula was amazing, and now that's going to be my new. I think that's going to be my new karaoke song.
Oh,
fantastic. I love Melissa McCarthy too.
Yeah.
I don't know anything about The Little Mermaid.
Me neither.
I know the scandal though. And one of my cousins, her granddaughter, she took her granddaughter to go see it, and she said Milani was yelling in the theater, "She looks like me, she looks like me, mommy, look, she looks like me." And that made me like so happy when she posted that on Facebook. She's like, you gotta see this, how the kids are reacting, right? Take the politics out, take us adults with all of our crap, right? And the kids are just in there having a ball. She goes to see their faces, having so much fun with this movie. So
I don't even think you can take the politics out, because again, Disney, of course, is the is releasing this movie. I also, across my LGBTQ themed social media, saw more LGBTQ people at this movie this weekend that I was even shocked. And again, where's our buying power, and who should Disney be standing behind? It's our community. And the representation, again, The Little Mermaid is not a real person, so the color of her skin is also not real.
What I mean?
So let's all remember that this is not a real person. And I'm very happy that she played the role.
Yeah, you know, I've gotten to meet Melissa McCarthy and interview her several times, and I'll tell you, she's wonderful. And the movies that I've interviewed her were never on LGBTQ plus themes. It was just, you know, The Heat with Sandy Bullock, you know, the fun Bridesmaid, the fun movies that she's known for. But when you go in, you've got like about a minute while they're adjusting your microphone and getting you set up and everything. So you kind of chat if they're in a chatty mood, and Melissa's always in a chatty mood. And she, you can just tell she's very open. Believe me, that she doesn't hold anything back, and she's very pro-LGBTQ. And while we weren't talking necessarily about LGBTQ themes, I would come in and maybe glittery things at 10 a.m. on a Sunday morning, you know, a little cracked out in my outfit, and she was always like, "Oh, you're fierce," or "You're like, oh, you're fun," or something like that. So she's very open, she's very funny. What you see is essentially what you get. And so go see Little Mermaid for myriad reasons. One of them is to see Melissa, because she is fantastic. Melissa, I love you. I get back on the junket circuit, I'm coming for you, girl.
Way to go, Melissa. You know,
before we go to the next story, I want to say I also love Willie Geist.
Oh yeah. Good point.
New Jersey boy. Next, let's queer up education. Governor Kim Reynolds passes Iowa's version of Don't Say Gay. Governor Kim Reynolds has signed a sweeping education law that orders the removal from schools of books that contain sex acts and restricts teaching about LGBTQ+ topics. The new Iowa law, also known as SF 496, prohibits instruction relating to gender identity or sexual orientation to students in kindergarten through 6th grade. The law also requires school administrators to notify parents if their child, quote, requests an accommodation related to their gender identity, including using a name or pronoun that is different from the one assigned to the student in the school's district registration forms or records, end quote. When it comes to books, the law puts restrictions on school libraries for students in kindergarten through 12th grade. The libraries can only have books deemed age appropriate, which according to the law excludes any materials with, quote, descriptions or visual depictions of a sex act, end quote. According to PEN America, there were more book bans across the country during the fall 2022 semester than in each of the prior 2 semesters. The bans were most prevalent in Texas, Florida, Missouri, Utah, and South Carolina. About 1/3 of the titles banned are books about race or racism or feature characters of color. The part of this story that is resonates the most with me is the book bans. I think we're getting labeled that book bans are impacting just our community, and I think I want to bring this to light just amongst our LGBTQ, because we're fighting about this. But it is erasing, of course, the Black history. It is erasing Indigenous people. It is erasing the stories of slavery and the Civil War. The Diary of Anne Frank is on the banned book list, and we need to use this moment to get with our allies across different factions of where these book bans are really impacting us, because I think that's where we create allyship and we fight back against these things. Yeah. And the second thing is I wanted to give just a quick shout out to Clementine Springsteen, who recently received an award in Ohio for the Governor's Scholar Program, and while on stage with the governor, yelled out "Trans Lives Matter" on stage. So thank you, Clementine, for sharing your voice and fighting back against this governor.
Yeah, the part I guess that gets to me, being a healthcare person, is this age appropriateness and this idea that sex and sexuality is somehow bad and something that shouldn't be discussed, and something that they're turning it into this thing like we're in the puritanical 1700s or something. Sex is not bad. Right. People should recognize and be able to have conversations. America's always been weird about that, right? Yeah. Europeans will walk around in a topless beach, nobody even notice. In America, everything is like this weird. They let religion and these different things influence things, but that stuff isn't real. You know what I mean? And in real life, I was in kindergarten when I decided that I thought Susie was cute. You know what I mean? It's like, what are you talking about? What are you afraid to discuss exactly? Who hurt you when you were a kid that you have such a weird, fearful, a weird, fearful idea about something that is the most natural thing on the planet? And why aren't we treating it like it's natural and loving? And why are we treating it as something that needs to be hushed and hidden and it's bad and oh my gosh? I'm like, and at the same time they're like, well, the kids are bad in school because we don't have enough God in school. It's like, have you read the Bible yet? There is more rape and incest than murder, and it's like, so what are you doing actually? They have to stop. The ideas of schools being safe spaces for our kids is one of the most important things that we have going. Homes are not always safe. Homes are really not always safe for LGBTQ students. You want to out second graders because they're like, oh, I want my name to be Johnny today? You want to out like a second grader who like, give me a break.
Or a second grader that has two daddies or two mommies.
This is what I mean. This is dangerous.
Or
it's not healthy.
Make them feel like that.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. It's just not, it's dangerous. It's not healthy. They need to stop. Whoever the powers that be, they need to stop giving into this nonsense.
They're not going to stop.
It's just ridiculous.
We need to fight back.
Well,
it's ridiculous.
And then this right now is, the powers who be, the powers who are in power at the moment, they're trying to erase history so we can rewrite history to match the story and the narrative that they're providing.
But it's too late for that.
And what happens is, because the older generation, is...
Why'd you look at me for that?
Well, you're a little bit older, so I know you probably have a little more history.
It's the old white man. Let's just see.
For historical reference.
Yeah, historical reference, exactly. But we see that happen across the globe, where chunks of our history are basically removed from the record books. And if you're not a historian, then you wouldn't even know something has happened. Yeah. There's some celebrities right now who are taken to like Instagram, and I want to say it was like Brad Pitt or something, or maybe it was no, it was probably Brad Pitt. I don't even remember. I'm sorry, I'm terrible at names, but they came out to tell them about. Actually, it wasn't Brad Pitt. It was the man called Otto guy. What's his name?
Tom Hanks.
Tom Hanks. Okay.
Girl,
Sorry, Tom.
Sorry,
Okay.
Brad Pitt.
You gotta go on Pyramid together, Josie.
Yeah. Sorry, my brain doesn't work anymore as it used to. But so Tom Hanks came out and he started talking about Black history here in the United States, and he's being very vocal about the book bans. And like you said, this is not just about the LGBT. This is about the history of many of our marginalized communities, and they're just trying to basically erase us. So we just stop teaching. And then you talk about indoctrination. That's what I'm so concerned here with. It's like, they're the biggest hypocrites on the planet right now. When you talk about what's indoctrination, are you not indoctrinating people by removing the history, the reality, the truth of our world history, and then feeding them with what you want us to know? Come on,
it's been done before, over and over and over.
That word we like here, gaslight.
We got Mussolini, we have
gaslight,
Genghis Khan.
That's right. But they didn't have technology. We have technology.
Right.
So you can take the book out of the library, but everybody's got
our gift.
Kindle on their phone. Like, you can download any book on the planet with a touch of a button.
You said that last week, and so now I'm posting on my social media the banned books.
Yep.
Good.
Yeah.
Broward County Library has the banned book.
Yeah, you can get them for free. It's like, come on.
And
you can't
here it is,
stop us.
technology. Have a read.
Yeah.
Well, and that's back to the point, to draw the line to the point you made a couple moments ago, is that it's too late for kids. But the right-wing fascists are hoping that this is their last shot, that they can basically, the second graders today will not even realize they're in a closet when they're 12th graders 10 years from now, because they haven't just been pushed back into the closet, it's been drilled shut because they're afraid to come out and say, and then the class of 2040 will not even know they're in a closet because everything is so hushed, everything is so back to the 1960s, 1970s. That's their goal. Will it succeed? Probably not. But it means we need to fight for these kids. We need to fight for the class of 2040, which is just now being born.
I mean, the school, right now, the kids in school are dodging bullets. Like, they have these things where they have to pretend like they're going to get slaughtered by guns. Right. And they have to hide. I'm like, what in the world is going on with them?
And we're worried about bullets.
Then they want, and then they want people, like, armed policemen walking around the school like it's a prison, threatening them with, like, oh my God, if you do something wrong, we're gonna, like, take you to jail. What are you talking about? These are kids. Then they're like, sex is bad, you can't talk to your friend, you can't. It's like, what in the world? This is complete insanity. This is not the way you have a civilized society at all.
They came in,
yes,
the criminals from England, nothing wrong with criminals, but you know, you got on a boat, you took a risk, and then you came in and you slaughtered indigenous people, slaughtered them, enslaved people of color, built, this whole country was built on killing people and enslaving people. And the kids need to know that so it doesn't happen again.
That's absolutely.
Never again.
That's right.
Well, so amen to that. And next, we are proud of our special partnership with Sunshine Cathedral, the world's largest queer church here in Fort Lauderdale. Supporting that partnership, we are broadcasting from our permanent set here at Sunshine Cathedral at the Happening Out television studios. We broadcast Sunshine Cathedral's Sunday International Service at 10:30 a.m.
Well, we continue now with the segment we call LGBTQ+ 1 Minute News.
LGBTQ+ 1 Minute News. Let's queer up drag culture. Texas House passes bill that LGBTQ+ fear may be used to target drag shows. On Sunday, the Texas House approved a version of SB 12 that omits direct references to drag performances. The original language of the Senate bill aimed to protect children from attending drag shows filled with sexual content. The bill would ban real or simulated groping, real or simulated arousal, and the display of a sex toy if done in a prurient manner, in front of a minor or on public property. And it includes a definition of sexual conduct that bars wearing accessories or prosthetics that enhance the female or male form in front of a minor or on public property. Violators of the SB 12 bill could face $10,000 in fines and a year in jail.
Next, LGBTQ plus 1 minute news. Let's queer up entertainment. Paramount Plus drag singing competition, Queen of the Universe, announces return of Graham Norton.
Are you ready for the most sickening singing competition in the universe? Let the drag extravaganza begin!
Theater, the Queen of the Universe.
The world's first ever vocal drag competition is bigger than ever. It's an all-new season of Queen of the Universe.
Time to spice up the competition. Are you ready for your life to change? That is what Queen of the Universe is all about. As I say in Australia, kick it in the
Executive producer RuPaul presents 10 drag vocalists from around the world.
In Brazil, we don't get these opportunities. It's 1 in a billion.
I'm not just representing my country, I'm wearing them.
And on this stage, there's absolutely no lip syncing.
On June 2nd, Queen of the Universe is coming to Paramount Plus for its 2nd season, hosted by Ireland's talented impresario Graham Norton. The show is 1 part Eurovision and 1 part RuPaul's Drag Race, which means 2 winning formulas have been rolled into 1 big spectacular show. Queen of the Universe is about pitting the participants' singing talents against each other, obviously, but it's also about their perseverance in the face of often terrible anti-LGBTQ plus prejudice. Queen of the Universe is a celebration of the talent and guts it takes to be a legendary queen in a world that's seemingly designed to belittle and dismiss them.
LGBTQ plus 1 minute news. Let's queer up lesbian culture. Lesbian activist Kathleen Stock faced protests during her address at Oxford University. Kathleen Stock, a gender-critical feminist who's been accused of being transphobic, addressed Oxford University students today, and in the middle of it, got protests. She insists she is a moderate and has a right to upset people. Well, hundreds of students took part in protests and counter-protests today in Oxford. Stock says it's her trans activist opponents who want the event canceled and who are extreme. The former university professor argues trans people cannot expect all the rights afforded by biological sex and says, quote, "We have to have freedom of speech. We have to be able to talk about this." Well, conservatives think LGBTQ plus community wants to take over the world, but we just want to have fun. So before we go tonight, here are some of those fun things to do in the gay agenda.
Next, the gay agenda. FLoatarama presents their garden party on the Waterfront fundraiser. Join the FLoatarama garden party on the Waterfront June 4th at the delightful new restaurant, The House on the River. Enjoy light bites, drink specials, and groove on the beats of DJ Ronnie Minuela. The party will happen from 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. and it's sure to be a ravishing afternoon, sun-kissed party with all the fun and entertainment you could want. Dock space is available for private boats on a first-come, first-served basis.
Next in the gay agenda, NovaCo Pride brings drag bingo to North Worcester County on June 11th. NovaCo Pride presents drag bingo at Leominster Bingo at Leominster Elks Lodge, hosted by Nikita LaFemme and friends. The LGBTQ plus Pride event brings together drag and bingo with games, fun, and lots of prizes. The event will take place on June 11th from 12 to 4 p.m. in Leominster, Mass. You can book tickets at novacopride.org. That is today's news for the LGBTQ plus community on the world's first and only daily LGBTQ plus evening news show.
If our community is important to you, share this news with your friends and family. Are you, like most of America, part of our very large television audience watching this live LGBTQ plus news broadcast right now on Roku, Apple TV, Android TV, and Amazon Fire TV?
Queer News Tonight is the only live LGBTQ plus digital television show in the world that is out of the closet and into the headlines. We need your support. If our community is to grow, we must tell our stories and bring them to the attention of the broader world.
This is the only place in the world that tells these types of LGBTQ plus stories in motion and sound. That is the passion of Hotspots Magazine, Happening Out Television Network, and Queer News Tonight.
I'm John Hayden, and on behalf of these LGBTQ plus reporters, the anchors of Queer News Tonight, including Chef Josie, Paul Thomas, Amy McGrotty, and Jeff Oliverio. We will see you daily at 8 p.m. But before we end our broadcast, one final story.
Finally, we queer up the big interview. Unapologetically Queer with Al Ferguson presents an exclusive interview with Pride Fort Lauderdale's Mike Martorell. Earlier today, Al Ferguson sat down with Mike Martorell of Pride Fort Lauderdale to discuss the controversy, financial issues, and staffing issues that the organization has faced since the COVID-19 pandemic began. From board resignations to questions about transparency, the president of Pride Fort Lauderdale offers a response to lingering questions about the organization's past. Mike also made an announcement about Pride Fort Lauderdale for 2024.
Well, Pride of the Americas was to be a grand event, similar to the prominence of World Pride. Pandemic put a hold on all of that, and when it returned, it just couldn't seem to find its mojo. There are so many questions to ask about what happened, why, and most importantly, what is next. Pride Fort Lauderdale's President Mike Martorell is here to answer those questions. Welcome to Unapologetically Queer. I'm your host, Al Ferguson, and I am proud to talk to some of the most interesting people that are interesting to our LGBTQ plus community. This is a unique opportunity and show in that it is an unedited conversation with these newsmakers. Well, Pride of the Americas, grand plans. The world turning its LGBTQ plus eyes on Fort Lauderdale. Boy George is going to sing on the beach. It likely began because of World Pride, perhaps their snub of South Florida as a selection site, and then this plan of a Western Hemisphere alternative is announced. An estimated $500,000 or so is seeded into the project from Visit Lauderdale, the city, and other interested parties. Then came pandemic, and the world shut down. What we didn't know then, what we do know now, that this is likely what spelled the doom of this grand project. This year's Pride Fort Lauderdale, Pride of the Americas, had so many issues, all explored blow by blow in the press, in LGBTQ gossip. The board seemed to collapse, the venue changed, sponsors were lost, there were money challenges for the organization and so much more. And Pride seemed to be less than transparent in everything that was happening on these issues. That's why I am very happy Pride Fort Lauderdale's President Mike Martorell is here to answer those questions and especially to discuss what's next. Well, welcome Mike Martorell. And first off, I understand you are unapologetically queer.
I sure am.
We get that out of the way right at the top of the show. All right. Well, tell us about first your history at Pride Fort Lauderdale. How did it happen? How long have you been, etc.?
Well, Al, thank you for allowing me to be here. You know, it's great to have a platform that can reach a lot of people, that can be seen a million times, and really it captures what is exactly happening. And there won't be any minced words. We'll know what happens. You know, whatever I tell you today, you're going to know it came from me. I started volunteering with Pride for years. I guess it could be maybe in the early 2000s. I was working at the Copa, and I got involved later on when I was working at the Coliseum as a DJ. I used to DJ for them, and then with my printing company, Planet Printer, I would donate product. Eventually, I think it was 2014, I got more involved, and I haven't left ever since. So.
And you worked for Costelli at the Copa?
I actually worked for Greg Bernard.
Oh, okay.
not as far back as Costelli.
Okay,
but yeah.
All right. I wasn't sure. To me, the most endearing thing about your story, since I've been in South Florida, is the number of prides that you've traveled to. You have literally been an ambassador for South Florida's LGBTQ plus community. Tell me about that and your desire to represent South Florida at so many prides all over the world.
You know, when I came into Pride, the one thing I noticed is that there was a lot of negativity about our organization. And it wasn't because the people before weren't paying attention. It's just, I think, that they weren't seeing what our organization can do. I also got into a situation where I didn't know how to run a Pride, per se. So I learned from others. And I thought, why don't I use my frequent flyer miles, which I have plenty of, because I pay for everything on my frequent flyer, my Southwest card. And we started traveling around, going to different cities and saying, hey, I just want to show up. Maybe we can put a booth up so we can promote our event, but I want to come up and help. And so we went to North Carolina, Atlanta, New York, Dallas, Palm Springs, Las Vegas, and then international destinations like Suriname. You probably wouldn't even realize that Suriname has a pride, but boy, was it a beautiful one. And the whole community comes together for that. Then there's Buenos Aires, Argentina, and Rio de Janeiro and Jamaica, which some people still are surprised has a pride, but they've had one for, I think, 8 or 10 years now. But I think the thing that really was the most exciting was being at Buenos Aires. And I tell this story all the time. Even the president of the organization from them, I was talking to her about it, and she was like, "Wow, you know so much." I said, "Because it's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen." They start out their event at Plaza Mayor, it's Casa Rosada, which is the Pink House, and they take a stage and make demands of the government. Then they take those demands in a parade form and go down about a mile or so to Plaza Mayor, which is the Congress, and they deliver those demands to Congress. It's the most symbolic, beautiful thing I've ever seen.
Literally a march.
It is literally, and it is everything that we know it to be.
Yeah, we're gonna get to that, but how appropriate of that experience being one of your favorites in this year in 2023 in terms of the need for marching. And speaking of that, before we get into talking about all of the issues related to Pride Fort Lauderdale, there's a lot going on in our world, especially here in Florida. The most anti-LGBT politician likely in history is now running for president of the United States. What do you think about, from your seat representing the Pride organization in Fort Lauderdale? And that's saying a lot. We're one of the gayest communities in America, in the world. What do you think about what you're watching in the politics of queer in America?
It's disgusting. We're being used as pawns for this guy to win an election. I don't care what side of the table you're on. I don't care what side of the aisle you're on. You should never put us in a situation where we're turned against each other. What he's doing is unforgivable. And I hope that it backfires on him. I don't know if it will, but I really do hope that it backfires on him, because it's about time that people realize that you can't beat us up, not just the LGBT community or the Hispanic community or the Black community or whatever. We are all people. We need to be treated like that. And you may not understand drag, but let me tell you, for the 27 years that I've been DJing and working in nightclubs, drag queens have always been my friends. I love drag queens. And the environment that they're in is a 21 and up crowd to begin with. So you're already used to that kind of, mentality. So when you're seeing those people outside, that doesn't mean they're going to be acting like that in front of your kids. They're not going to be, and if you bring your kids to a place that's 21 and up, maybe you should be thinking twice.
It's a perfect segue. We're getting ready to start June Pride Month and celebrate June Pride Month. I am broadcasting on the main stage at June Pride Month's Stonewall Pride Parade and Festival. And I've never been in a community where there are so many Pride events as what I've seen here in South Florida. First and foremost, do you think that that's a good thing? Have you ever been asked that before? There's like really a dozen real LGBT major events. Is that good for our community?
You know, I guess we have so many people here. I mean, we have a huge LGBTQ plus community here. It's massive. And so if little communities want to come together and put their own together, I don't see a problem with it. I think there are a couple that are, or there is one at least that I know of that's out there that is masquerading as an organization like that. And it was started by a straight man who owns a production company and is making money off the community. I have a problem with that. But again, who am I to say? I say that the more pride, the more people that know that we're here and that they can understand more about LGBTQ people, I think the better.
Interesting. Well, let's go to the roots of where we got to today. And that's talking about the creation of Pride of the Americas. I understand that in 2018, Fort Lauderdale bid for 2020 World Pride. Interpride, the international organization that chooses the bids, chose Copenhagen. In May 2018, at the International Gay and Lesbian Travel Association, IGLTA, headquartered, by the way, here in Fort Lauderdale and Welton Manors, at their annual global convention, the Greater Fort Lauderdale Convention and Visitors Bureau announced the first ever Pride of America's celebration, which would be held in April of 2020. Now think about that date and what ultimately happened. Mike, how did the decision to hold Pride of America's come about? And just briefly explain to us how that decision was made.
It was simple. We did have a failed bid for World Pride. Part of our vision for World Pride was to bring attention to areas in the Americas, Latin America, the Caribbean, where Pride wasn't really as prevalent as it could be. It is starting to happen now, and I think we were timely in when we started because it was beginning at that point. And so we wanted to really show the world that there are LGBTQ people all over the Caribbean and all over Latin America that are being ignored. And we wanted this to travel to different cities every couple of years, opposite of World Pride.
You know J.W. Arnold,
yes.
Of course you know well, I know well, was marketing and public relations at the time for Pride Fort Lauderdale. He talked about this moment of having Pride of the Americas, and he said, quote, "This is the first time that Pride of the Americas has been held, and it will be the first time. We bid to host World Pride in Fort Lauderdale, and we weren't chosen. But we decided what a great opportunity to take all that work and that creativity and the planning and turn it into an event that people can enjoy. And since Europe has Euro Pride every other year, we thought, why not create a festival that people can have in the Western Hemisphere every other year? So it might be in Fort Lauderdale in 2020, but it could then be in Brazil or Argentina, Chile or Costa Rica or Canada 2 years later." I'm curious, who was the principal organizational or voices to develop World Pride? I've heard many different...
World Pride, you mean?
Yeah, to have Pride of the Americas.
I mean, we actually created it. It was, Hernan Valverde was the one that came up with the name. He was our board member at the time, and he didn't even remember he did. I said, "You were the one that came up with the name." So anyway, but it was just one of those things that it just matched what we were already envisioning to do.
Was it a collective decision, or was there
for all of us to do? Yeah. Well, I mean, our board liked the idea. It was presented to them. We had actually right after, this was the moment I think it's when it really clicked. Right after we lost, I was in tears. I felt like I had let down our community. I really did. I said that because I felt like we had a great shot at it. And I take things very personal, because I'm that's just who I am. I try not to, but I do. And so I went out, and our mayor, our county mayor there, Mayor Sharif, was there, and I was crying, and I apologized to her, and she said, "Why don't you just do this on your own?" And then it all clicked. That moment that she said that, literally it all clicked. And we all started talking about we came up with the name at that point. within a couple of hours of losing our bid, I had already registered the domain. So it was a lot. It was a lot of support from the county, really believing in what we were trying to do. There was so much.
Meaning Visit Lauderdale?
Yes, Visit Lauderdale. Yeah. So they were just amazing. Yeah. And they still are. I mean, they believed in us and they stood behind us through the whole thing.
It was an ambitious plan. J.W. Arnold continued by saying, quote, "We're shooting for 350,000 people on Fort Lauderdale Beach, which would make Pride of the Americas one of the largest LGBTQ events in the history of Florida." We now know the actual results of what happened 2 months prior, COVID-19, 2 months prior to Pride of the Americas happening. COVID-19 pandemic shut the world down, and Pride of the Americas really never recovered. What do you think about looking back on the anticipation that maybe 350,000 people would come to Pride of the Americas, and what ultimately happened?
Well, I'm going to call this event math because it's really hard for people to understand. Every day that there's every festival day or every day there's an event, those people are counted. So if you had 10,000 people on Saturday and 10,000 people on Sunday, it could be 20. The same 10,000 people, but it's 20. So it's event math. Right. And I try to
every event does that.
It's unfortunately every event. Yeah. So it could have been 100,000 people that showed up, but
But to your point, clear, heard.
It still wasn't nearly the same.
Right. That's absolutely. What and it must have been heartbreaking.
It was. I mean, I noticed this back in May of 2022 that we were just at a point where this was not going to work. It was brought up to me by a couple of friends and said, are you going to have enough time to pull this off? And I said, I don't think so. We're going to have to talk about it. So I brought it up in our board meeting. I was really pushing it. I talked to everybody in advance. Unfortunately, they didn't see it that way. They thought we could pull it off. Pulling it off and doing it are two different things.
So in terms of hindsight's always 20/20.
Absolutely.
Was that the moment where you think things began to go awry, that there was the continued commitment to wanting to do Pride of the Americas, but you began to feel in your gut, now we can't do this? Is that true?
I don't think it was the moment because we could have still had a lovely event. It could have been better than it was. I just believe there were other things going on. We had a lot of internal challenges with new board members coming in that weren't.
I'm going to talk about that because that's part of the all of the things, the transparency issues. Exactly. We'll talk about that. But Pride of the Americas is so much at the heart of today's conversation and what has been talked about at Pride Fort Lauderdale for the past 6 or 8 months. In hindsight, do you wish after pandemic you would have taken it off the table and said, we're not doing Pride of America today? Do you think that?
I would have loved to be able to come up with another solution, but remember we did have a sponsor who had the county who had a big part in it, and for us we already refunded half of their money, and for us to do this again, it would have been financial ruins.
Okay, and all right. Well, I understand that. We'll dive into that. But before we get into all of the questions, the transparency issues for Pride Fort Lauderdale, let's talk about 2023. So we go approximately a year and 14 months after pandemic in terms of getting to the February implementation of Pride Fort Lauderdale this year in February of 2023. It happens, but lots of changes. I'm curious, just to simply answer the question for people that have, armchair quarterbacked Pride Fort Lauderdale for February. Were you happy with the parade? Were you happy with the ultimate footprint? Mm-hmm. Did you like Pride this year?
There were things. There were things I did like. What I liked is that we may not have done what we wanted to do, but we honored our commitment. We made it happen. The place was busy. The people were happy. We still had the headliner that we promised. I mean, when it comes to accountability, even though things weren't this wonderful thing that we wanted, which we didn't even paint the picture that way after 2020. There wasn't a picture like that was anything near what we were going to do. It was definitely going to be scaled back. We knew that going into it. But this particular event happened, even in the footprint, that we like. I like the footprint after all. It actually turned out really nice.
In the Las Olas Park.
Yes, the Las Olas Oceanside. I'm sorry, not Oceanside, but the Intracoastal Park.
Right.
I really like that park. It was good because it was contained. A lot of our expenses come from being on the sand. The city charges $30 a space now for parking. So you start doing the math. If you have to have 428 spaces or whatever, that starts adding up. When you have $150,000, $180,000 that you're going to have to spend in parking, that makes it impossible to do an event properly on the beach.
And how about the parade? Were you happy with the parade?
I'm happy we had the parade.
Okay, that's a pretty low bar of viewers. Let's make sure.
I'm being honest.
I'm going to push the transparency issue every step of the way.
Absolutely.
The low bar is it happened, but did you like it?
I wish we would have. I didn't personally get to see it, but I do know how many contingents we had. I'm happy that the people that we did have were great. I'm not happy as far as I think we can do more.
Yeah.
And I know we can do more. And I know that our future will definitely show that we've made a concerted effort to change that.
It's interesting in the compare and contrast. I broadcast on It's Happening Out at the time, the Fort Lauderdale parade going into the evening, late
yes, the first year, 2019.
The first year
yes.
of 2019, and Dean Trentellis was on our panel as we were doing it, and I had never seen anything like it on the beach. It was just amazing that it was at A1A. So it definitely has the bones of greatness, but a lot of things after pandemic. Our viewers, as our viewers know, for 8 months there was significant changes in Pride of America's Pride Fort Lauderdale. I'm using both names because they were transitional. And there were significant transparency questions that began appearing about the nonprofit 501c3 before Pride and after Pride. Now remember, our footprint date is February of this year, 2023. This is, as I said at the top, an outstanding opportunity to talk to Mike Matarel as president to clear the record. So let's just go right through it. All of the things that I have read in the press and in the gossip, and in the gossip I mean Facebook, because there's lots of journalists in Facebook. I'm sure you know that, right?
The journalists.
Okay, right.
Here today, gone tomorrow.
Okay, all right. Let's discuss first off the Pride Board. I want to begin with conversations about the Pride Board itself. Resignations started early in the year, really at the end of 2022, and they continued leading up to Pride. And since I understand all board members have resigned, and the only board member is currently you as president. Is that correct?
Okay, well first, I'm going to answer all those questions, but I've heard about a dozen times about transparency. I want to make it abundantly clear. Just because somebody puts it in an article or puts it in a title doesn't mean it's true. It does not. I have a big mouth. As you know, as anybody who knows me knows, the last thing I am is going to hide things. And our organization has never hidden anything. At least as long as I've been involved, we haven't. It's really interesting because every one of our meetings, there's the budget's there, all the information is there. Anybody from any organization, even if you pop in just for that day, for that meeting, you're going to see and hear everything. And there's no filter. There's nothing to hide. Because even if we do make mistakes, we're human and mistakes can happen. Nothing's done with malice, no matter whether we agree or disagree with each other. So I just want to clear that up because it really isn't about transparency. It's about not understanding.
Okay.
And that I'm happy to clear up.
Okay.
So back to your original question, which was
the board. The board. Right.
So you wanted to know how many, yes.
I read that there is no one on the board now. So, you're the only, as president of Pride Fort Lauderdale, you're the only person on the board. Is that true?
As of this moment, I am the last board member. Now, just like with any organization, we're going to have to rebuild, and we're in a rebuilding state.
Oh, wait, I want to talk about that in a moment, in a little greater clarity, but. The thing that interests me next, if you're the only board member, is why do you think this happened? I can't recall a situation like this where basically over the course of 6 or 8 months, an entire board has departed and resigned. Why do you think this happened?
It's actually it wouldn't be unreasonable to consider in this case. We had two people, Morgan and Ashley, who were on our board. Morgan had gone through some health issues, and his wife, Ashley.
Morgan and Ashley Mayfair.
Mayfair, yes.
Right.
Literally, salt of the earth, most amazing people I could ever want. I consider them family. Literally, they're just that amazing. At some point, it was hard for all of them to do this and have to fight all the nonsense that's going on. Well, all the nonsense that's going on with the state trying to, make their lives
trans. They lead transsocial.
Exactly. I apologize. I'm basically talking like we know everything. But so for them, that was their reason for leaving. With Sean Palacios, he was having anxiety issues because the board meetings were contentious at many times. All the other board members that were on from before, all the other board members were all new board members that came on that year.
Which I want to talk about separately.
Yes. So just so you know that, so basically our core board members were, they all left for health reasons, really. So it's not unusual that things like that could happen. And then the other people, maybe for whatever reasons, their reasons for leaving, I'm not going to speculate. What they said and what might be the case are different. So it may be different. I don't want to speculate, but
you start down the path in terms of reconstituting the board. The bylaws are in place, and help us understand what comes next. How does the board get reconstituted? What's the process that's going to happen now?
Well, we're going to look at some of our previous board members. We are looking at some of our previous board members who have experience, who, according to our bylaws, have left in good standing and can come back. And if they come back, we can start reconstituting, recreating a board, because you need to earn your position on the board. That's the reason when a successful board works is because everybody on that team has been there working together. And when you see somebody coming up in the ranks, you're more willing to work with them. When somebody just walks in the door and doesn't have that, it's a lot harder.
So talent from before have been invited to rejoin the board. In terms of a timeline to see some movement, I'm going to do a quote that Dean has done this week about the board. I know you're familiar with it. What kind of timeline are we looking at where more people serve on the board?
Well, I think the way we need to rework things is always shifting the importance to the work and not the board. What's happened in the past is people want to join the board because we keep saying the board, the board, the board. The fact is that the team that puts it together isn't always the board members. Many times it's the associates, it's the volunteers that have taken on a bigger role who don't want a board role. We need to focus on creating that team. We actually have a good team in place when it pertains to that. But bringing in new board members over time is the right way. We're starting probably within this month, in June, we probably will have our essential beginning board, the board of bringing back.
And define what that is.
And,
how many people does that mean?
It probably will be, to stay legally correct, it will be probably 3 people, because I can't say that we could get a whole group of people back. Many of the people that were board members are from well before. So, and the ones that recently left are unlikely to come back because of the issues that they had.
Okay.
But
so the goal is for June to have 3 board members, continue to reconstitute from there. That's what your goal is. Okay. All right. So that's the situation of the board. When this begins, let's say in the month of June, the board will meet weekly, monthly. What will it do?
Generally, we try to meet monthly until we get 6 months out from Pride, and then it can go to bi-weekly or even weekly.
And that's your commitment of what you're going to do?
That's generally the way it's worked. Sometimes we start earlier, and it might be that we go to every 2 weeks, just starting out, because there's going to be a lot of things going on. I think it's more,
All right, let's talk about financial management of Pride. Lots of the story-related themes relate to money. Manuel Santos, which I think was identified as a treasurer, you correct me, resigned in January. Then, as you have explained, Ashley Mayfair resigned shortly after Pride, medical conditions and transsocial issues in that resignation. For the financial people that are on the board, why did they resigned. Ashley, you've explained the other person that we believe, Emmanuel Santos, which was associated with this. Why did Emmanuel resign?
So both of them were co-treasurers. Eman had come in towards in June under that. I can tell you what.
Meaning he came in with the group that came in.
Group. And I believe that was the reason.
Okay, and let's talk about that contextually later. I want to make sure. Okay,
so there's no.
That's the two.
Correct.
He was part of the group that we're going to talk about, and then Ashley Mayfair, which you've already talked about.
Correct.
Your bylaws indicate that you have a particular procedure, and the reason I ask you about the financial issue is you have a particular procedure in terms of paying bills.
Correct.
The number of signatures for things that you purchase or you transact in your business. How are you able to do that right now? How is things being paid at Pride Fort Lauderdale?
First and foremost, there was some inaccurate information as to how the checks are supposed to be signed by two individuals. That hasn't happened in multiple years, maybe 6 years, since before I was involved. Since Norm Kent was involved, it was only one signature. So there is not two signatures required. That was inaccurate. And I actually discussed that before with the reporter to let them know. That being said, at this point, the only things that we're paying are bills that have been approved by the board and not new bills. We're just going through, like, for example, I know we will discuss it later, but our executive director's pay, that's already been set up, that's already been approved. What is it called? The thing I was going to tell you about later, the drag queen bingo, that's been approved. These are things that we're not going to start doing anything until we have a board to make those final decisions. But these were ones that they were already committed to, and that, according to our bylaws, is what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to pay bills that are bylaws.
Making sure that I understand. So essentially you're saying you're frozen at where you're at right now, except for the things that had already been decided on and done by the board. And the issue in terms of multiple signatures, I've seen the bylaws. The bylaws do require, there is wording to require multiple signature. Now, whether the board has followed that since Norm Kent, for example, if that were the case, then the bylaws either need to be changed or you have to follow the bylaws.
The bylaws will definitely need to be changed, but I'm not sure where you're seeing those because I went through them again today myself.
Okay.
And I know that there's a cash handling procedure, and that's in that part of the procedure. It shows that with the events that two directors have to handle that because you want it to be verified, and then the treasurer is to ensure that the deposit goes in.
To be sure I'm clear, your observation is that basically you're in freeze. The things that you're doing are things that have already been decided and voted on, and you don't believe multiple signatures are required by the bylaws. I've got that right.
Yes, that is correct. And I will also add one thing to that. As far as the bylaws are concerned, there's at any point, and again, I can't find that. It may very well be in there, but we're not out there spending a lot of money anyway. We're really just, the vast majority of it is paying whatever bills were committed. There was something from Pride that was left over, an old bill that they still have to get paid. That was already pre-approved.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're not out spending money.
Well, and I understand your observation about transparency and commitment earlier. The transparency that I'm talking about is the criticism that people don't know about it, and they ask questions. And an example, you don't have to, and an example of that is your secretary in the minutes. It was discussed as early as 4 months before Pride that minutes at board meetings were not being taken or published as per requirements of the bylaws. I believe the secretary resigned 2 months prior to Pride. In the exchanges in the reporting that went on about how did you see what the board was deciding and how they were operating the business of Pride Fort Lauderdale, why weren't minutes being taken? Why?
Completely inaccurate. Yet again, completely inaccurate. So just so you understand, we have to create an agenda so that we have a meeting. Otherwise, we're going into it not knowing anything that we're doing.
Right.
We take that agenda, we make additions or changes, we signify any votes that are taken all that stuff, that happens every meeting. It's happened every meeting, every board meeting that we've had since I've been involved and since well before I've been involved. So I think there's misunderstanding, miscommunication. But
why do you think there's misunderstanding?
I don't know. I'm still trying to figure out why somebody would want to believe the worst when there's so many people that don't believe that.
So the challenge there, Mike, is if that is in the way you characterize it, where could I go and read the minutes? The meeting of February 1st, let's say. Here is the meeting was had. Here's what the agenda was. Here's the minutes of what was decided on these agenda items. Where could I find that?
So this is where there may be the reason. Back in 2016, I think it was, when we rewrote the bylaws. In fact, we used Las Vegas Pride as as part of the way we wrote them because they had really good bylaws. Part of their bylaws were to put the minutes up on the website. Now, for the first 3 years or so, I handled that myself until the website got changed over, and I didn't really have the same access to do that. And since we didn't have a secretary, it's very challenging, by the way, to find a person who wants to do all the paperwork for a secretary, even though it's not as hard as it seems. They just don't want to. So that particular job wasn't there, so there was nobody handling it. We were all doing it ad hoc.
When that change took place to whoever was reducing your access and ability to continue that job, who was that?
Well, it wasn't reducing it. It was just the fact that it was, when we switched over to the Pride of the America site, we just didn't even think about putting it in there. And I think it was because it wasn't me that was putting it together. It was being, actually JW had put the site together. This is not against him, of course, but he was the one that had put that site together. And I didn't even think to tell him, we need to add this to it. It's just one of those things. We hadn't had the problem.
If people wanted to go back and see minutes of any of the meetings, let's say over the last year, could they currently do that?
If they contacted me, they could. Okay. I know that according to our bylaws, you have to make them available so they can come to the office and take a look at them, basically.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you have a desire or commitment through the Pride Fort Lauderdale website to make the minutes, the past minutes and the meetings, but definitely the meetings going forward? Do you have a commitment to wanting to publish the minutes so somebody doesn't have to go through that step, they can see them publicly? Or do you not want to do that?
I have to say that it's so hard when you tell people the truth, they read into it whatever they want. And so I'm not saying that we wouldn't do it. It is discouraging to me to have it up on the website for people to come take a look at and make their own observations and without asking questions. And then the next thing you know, we become a
But Mike, let me challenge that for
and I'm
viewers,
not saying you're right, yeah.
right? For viewers that are watching and saying, well, but don't make that decision. I just want to have access to read it, and I don't care what Mike Martorell thinks about why I do it, and I should have access.
I'm not saying that they're wrong. What I would do and what I will do is I will look at what legally is required, and we will stick to what is legally required.
Right.
And the reason is because then what happens if 1 or 2 weeks go by and I don't post, or somebody doesn't post, or something doesn't happen? Then we get the same problem again. Right. I'd rather have a consistent way that can be maintained. And I don't have a problem. The minutes are, every meeting, everybody who's in the meeting sees the minutes. They're being done while they're like literally showed up on the screen.
Right.
We're all going through them. So,
right. Okay.
Yeah. And we're not afraid to have people in meetings. You could always show up.
Well, actually, great segue, because I was getting ready to ask you that. There has been some criticism in circles, unnamed sources, let's just agree, unnamed sources.
Rumors.
Unnamed sources that say the visibility of the board meetings is not as transparent or clear in the sunshine as it should be. Can people from the general public, from our LGBTQ community, participate and go to a board meeting?
Yep.
Explain that.
They're done online right now. They're not, that might change. I will say that I love the internet, but I think when we're not working together, when we're not in the same room together, I think it does have a negative, feeling. We have more camaraderie when we're working together. So nonetheless, but we did have that, and we will have that again. And anybody's welcome to come to the meeting. We've always been that way. I will say that we haven't been posting the meeting, so that doesn't necessarily mean that it may appear to be that they're not invited, but that's just a mistake on our part that we need to do.
You agree that that's a mistake to post?
Absolutely, absolutely.
So the go forward is post the meetings because you can participate in the meetings.
And that's the problem when you have a smaller board.
Yeah.
So you have to have the people to do the job.
Yeah.
And so that's what we are going to be doing. You know, is changing that.
Actually, and I'm not throwing shade, but you had a paid executive director, and this is one of the jobs that a paid executive director could have done to eliminate this problem. So let's discuss that. Former executive director Kevin Clevenger. Lots of gossip here. The gossip in social media was that there was a very significant conflict between you and the former executive director, Kevin Clevenger. First off, is that true?
I mean, we're like anybody.
I'm not talking about personal things. I'm talking about, was there conflict at Pride Fort Lauderdale?
Of course there's disagreements on things. That's not unusual. It doesn't change the fact that he's an incredibly dedicated, hardworking person. And when you're in an environment where you enjoy what you're doing and you're appreciated for it, you'll do well. And I think that's hopefully where he's at now. When he was with us, he was appreciated, and we wanted him to be successful, that we wanted everything. But there are going to be times we don't agree. He was one of the people that didn't agree with us pushing Pride of the Americas off another year. And he, to his credit, maybe he felt like that was because, we go back to the county, it's going to look bad. So, but we're allowed to have a difference of opinion. It doesn't mean that him and I mean, it hurt when we didn't agree on things, but that's just because I think we both wanted, we both saw it differently.
So let's look at an example. You've referred to it already, but let's look at an example of the potential outcomes of a difference of opinion. There's been a lot of conversation about significant events that took place in the second and third quarter of 2022, with many new people coming onto the board. It has been suggested by multiple unnamed sources that it was designed to basically take over Pride. The bylaws apparently were not followed on how one gets onto the board in terms of length of service, etc. What do you think about this observation about Pride was, it was an attempted takeover of Pride? What do you think?
Wow. I'd like to go, with something like this, I'd like to go on fact and not opinion. So, because I don't have anything that tells me that factually that's what was happening, I'd prefer to just believe that that's not what's happening. I mean, there were some uncomfortable situations, but I can't speak to something that I don't know. The last thing I want to do is do what somebody did to me and assume.
Yeah, okay, understood, heard loud and clear. But then the follow-up is your bylaws were in place in terms of how you got on the board, and you apparently didn't follow those because those people got on the board that could not have qualified to be on the board. Why did you allow that to happen?
And I own this because we have a very specific way of people joining the board. You have to spend a year as an associate member. You have to do that. You have to learn. We have to learn from each other. We have to see if we're going to work together well. You have to see how our organization is, and whether you feel that we're the kind of organization you want to be with. And vice versa. Is this going to be, fighting all the time, or we're going to get, or you're going to work? Like some people come in, they think it's just, they say things like they think it's a managing board, not a working board. Ours is a working board. You have to get down and dirty and do the work.
Why didn't you do that then?
Well, with this particular case, we had several board members that were already there. I'm one vote that I don't even get to cast unless there's a tie. So if two people have 3 or 4, or if 4 people are there and 2 people vote, that's the only time I vote one way and 2 people vote the other. That's the only time I get to even vote. I get to open my big mouth and push it, but it doesn't mean that I win.
Help us understand then the other board members that are voting to expand these new seats onto the board that don't have, according to the bylaws, the time qualifications to do it, but also the philosophical changes that were going on at Pride Fort Lauderdale because they were coming on to the board. What the standing board members that began to do that, why did they do that then?
I think 1 or 2 of them knew one of the people coming on well. Another, and again, I shouldn't do an assumption, but I'm thinking that was the reason. because they were introduced. And then, you know, if you're in a situation, sometimes you see, well, we need help. And I think we all felt like we needed more people to help. But I felt very uncomfortable when this was going on, not because these were bad people. I don't know who they are, really. I really didn't know who they were. So coming into a brand new group of people and literally taking half of your board coming in at one time, it swayed the board's vote. So
in experience, in viewpoint, in terms of not being part of the Pride of America philosophy, in terms of not living through pandemic, in terms of not living through the money that was seeded from Visit Lauderdale and all of the other organizations.
Absolutely.
I start with Pride of the Americas and try to set up the story here of how this all evolved. Now you're at real crisis moment at this moment.
Well, crisis is probably... A crisis is at the end of the day when we didn't have any solutions.
Okay.
I just don't want to at this point we were beginning what could have ended up being far worse, and at the end of the day it wasn't perfect, but we still have an organization, and we're still here, thank goodness. But
okay, so in this transition circle of what happens, he resigns. Kevin Clevenger, as executive director, resigns. But
this is towards the end of the year.
Yes, it was toward the end of the year of 2022. Pride is now going to be in February of 23.
Correct.
A lot of conversation in circles, media reporting, and the gossip is the board, and presumably Mike Martorell doesn't accept his resignation until after Pride. Why did you do that?
That's not what happened.
Okay, explain it to us.
What happened was he requested to stay on until 2 weeks after Pride. Actually, was it 2 weeks? Yeah, 2 weeks after Pride. No, 3 weeks. The first week in May. I'm sorry, March. He wanted to stay on to the first week of March, so that way he can make sure that all of the sponsors, because his job was to bring in sponsors, his job was to bring in revenue, help us with the event, that all of his sponsors were taken care of, and that all the money that we were supposed to get was all brought in. So we had a debate on this, and some of us agreed. Some of us didn't agree. Some of us didn't agree the amount of time. Whatever the case, the majority, which made sense, the majority voted to accept it. So
except 2 weeks after Pride.
No, it was actually 3. So
okay.
For him to continue and be paid until 3 weeks after Pride.
Okay.
To some extent, in retrospect, some of it made sense because we didn't have any contracts in place. We didn't have really any sponsor money in place, that some, but not all that we were expecting. So I want to make sure I'm clear here. You're going into November or December, 2 months before. December's when it all happened. Yeah, before you're leading to a threshold of about 60 days prior to Pride of the Americas, Pride Fort Lauderdale, and you're concerned about the contractual and the amount of money obligations that are going on. Is that right? I was concerned in September of the previous year when I submitted the budget. I write the budget. I'm very detailed on my budget. Every single item, every single thing that we pay for, I've worked really hard and I'm very proud of it. I'm very frugal. So I make sure that every penny that's spent is respecting the community's money. And that's the way and our group feels it's the community's money. So we were at a point where we could not have a $900,000 budget. I went on for a couple of months telling the board, we got to figure this out. We have to figure it out. And then everything really comes together in December when they start to realize, the end of November, beginning of December, when they start to realize, hey, this is too far off of where we need to be and we don't have the sponsorships to cover it. We need to find other solutions. Is that why he resigned? I can't say that's why he resigned. I can say that the last suggestion that he made was to move it to a different venue. That venue wasn't available, and then he resigned after that. So I don't know if that says anything, but it's what happened. And that's, I would love to be able to get in somebody's head and say it, but then who am I to do that? Mm-hmm. I'm curious in this issue, at the end of the day, you went through this process, difficult inheritance of what happened on World Pride, crying at the announcement at Enterpride's decision on
Copenhagen, the transition and the excitement of what Fort Lauderdale is going to do with World Pride, pandemic hits, the issues of the transitions of post-pandemic, we come to this event and these incredibly disappointing events and things that occur that you just talked about. Was Kevin Clevenger the right person as executive director for Pride Fort Lauderdale?
I think that's something that the community can decide. I think he had a lot of heart. He did a lot of wonderful things for us. He works he really works hard. I mean, he does. And I'm not here trying to make enemies or anything. I don't want to be negative. I really do. If there is a time that I cared about him, then there should still be a time I care about him. And I care for him to be, and if this wasn't a good fit, it wasn't a good fit. You know, that does happen.
Understood. This whole area of the board and the things that we have just talked about and your executive director, anything you would have done differently through this process?
Yeah, I would have absolutely not allowed I would have figured out a way in the bylaws to not allow all these people to come on at one time without some real good, reasoning, because I don't think that it was the right thing for us. I think that was the worst part of what happened last year.
You pushed me off a little when I said the second quarter and the third quarter of last year was really the fundamental issue of what really changed everything. Now you're saying that was it.
That was the beginning of it. Yeah, the crisis, you want to call it that.
Okay.
That was, because even then we still had a chance to fix things. Things could have worked out, but I just don't think that, part of that time we were, I was trying to get them to understand technically this isn't right. and I spent 2 months doing that, but it didn't work out.
Yeah. Okay. A couple of other things that have appeared that I'm curious about. Let's talk about tax returns. I've read there is an ongoing reporting by SFGN's John Hayden that Pride hasn't filed a tax return since fiscal year 18-19 per the IRS. Simply, is that correct?
No. We filed everything up to 2022. We were completely up to date. If you go to the actual website for the IRS, you'll see right there that it shows a date, update, delay, and it actually just explains. And how I found this out is because I was looking up ours and looking up others to see before even the reporting was done, believe it or not. And that's what popped up there. And I realized, wait a minute, why is it nobody is filed after the 2019? So that's it. They're just...
So unequivocally,
100%.
It's been filed.
Yeah.
And this week is the deadline for the filing for 22-23, which
that's already been done.
And it is completed.
It's 22 because we're
I didn't.
So yeah, that's done.
It's complete. Okay.
That's been turned in already.
Right.
So
okay. Even asking the questions on the tax return with all of the other related issues, you can understand why people begin to reach and start discussing all kinds of other kinds of things because of confidence of transparency. You understand that, right?
I understand why people would ask questions. What I don't understand is when someone is given answers, why they wouldn't use those answers or at least investigate to see if those answers are right and publish headlines that are irresponsible.
Yeah, I want to talk about SFGN, but we'll in a moment. Money issues. Let's dive into that for a moment. And perhaps this is the key issue of the transparency conversations that go on over Pride Fort Lauderdale. And I want to ask you about 2023 Pride of Americas and the financials and all of the things inaccurate, if they're accurate. First off, let's talk about Visit Lauderdale. They seeded a substantial amount of bed tax money into Pride of the Americas. How much did they pledge in Pride of Americas?
$500,000.
So that $500,000 is an accurate number. After the pandemic and the changes that were going on, I've read so many things, likely much inaccurate. How much did they ask back?
They originally asked for the entire amount back. I think it's because of the way they have to be able to show that the money was used for something. And they couldn't because nothing happened. We were all in uncharted territory. So we worked together with them. It took a little while, but we negotiated and we were able to get it down to half that, which we initially offered. So the good thing is that we were able to keep some of it, which we actually
So
spent.
Pride Fort Lauderdale returned $250,000 back to Visit Lauderdale, and the others, you had administrative expenses, you had travel, you had contracts that Boy George had.
Boy George had been partially paid. So yeah, so we had spent money. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so you were allowed to keep $250,000 of the $500,000 that was done. That's correct, right? And did they ever suggest through the process? I'm curious. From Visit Lauderdale, did they ever suggest that legal action could be taken against Pride Fort Lauderdale?
I don't remember them doing it, to be honest with you. But I want you to know that we were not the only event that dealt with the situation. They had other events that had the same situation, and they handled everything equally, 100%.
Okay. All right. And clear, you weren't being threatened. Pride Fort Lauderdale wasn't legally being threatened over the situation. Yeah. All right. So we're now 3 months after Pride. You've had plenty of opportunity to resolve the accounting and the facts. Help us in terms of understanding what happened in February. How did Pride do in terms of how much was spent, the revenue that was generated, the expenses, or is there a pot of money for future Pride Fort Lauderdale? Was there a loss? What happened from February?
Well, I guess the best thing would be to let you know what our revenue or our expenses were, and there might be a couple of more things that have come in, like, believe it or not, trash that hasn't been accounted for here. But we had $450,000, $349.66. That was our expenses, on revenue of $481,510.69 with a surplus of $31,161.03. And that's what we've been using to move forward.
Yeah, so currently you have approximately $30,000, which is the base to start again for Pride Fort
There's
Lauderdale.
less than that, obviously, because we had expenses after the fact, paying salaries and paying Kevin's salary, such.
Okay. As news began reporting on Pride Fort Lauderdale and some of the issues that were being reported on and discussed in social media, it was reported that sponsors were beginning to back out. Is that true?
We had, because of the inaccurate reporting, and I'm going to make that, and because of that, one sponsor pulled out, specifically stated that they didn't want their name being, mentioned in a publication.
I have an obligation to ask you who that is.
I prefer. I'm not trying to be dismissive because I don't.
You can be dismissive.
Because at this point, if they've already told me that to respect them and not have their name out, I don't want to do it again. But I'm sure if you look through, that was one of the things that they did get accurately.
Okay.
So in the publication, so I will give them credit for that. Yes, that was, and they just didn't want to be part of that. And that's what happened.
I read separately. Let's end that conversation, start a new conversation so we don't have any linkage to the two conversations. I understand that Community AIDS Network, CAN, Midland Medical, has asked for money back. Is that correct?
They have asked for a refund.
Yeah. Is Pride Fort Lauderdale, have they refunded Midland Medical?
No, we have not.
And do you intend to refund Midland Medical?
No, we do not.
Okay.
Would you like to know why?
Please.
Okay, because in our contract, it does not offer the option for someone to pull out, especially 2 weeks before the event, and demand or receive a refund. Those monies are allocated, and if we did that, if somebody got a whim, if all of a sudden, the governor decided to pull something and they decided they didn't want to be involved, we pulled their name out, we honored every other thing, but we can't give you your money back because we've committed that money.
And you make that statement here in the show, in that you want to go on record. This is it. Even if we risk you being unhappy with us in the future, that's your final decision.
Well, it's
Pride's final decision.
Yeah. Well, this is a decision that's made with obviously seeking legal help. It's really important to understand that we don't want negativity. We would love to work with them again. We would love to make things work out. We would love to find a way for that. And we did try to find a way to include them in the future and find some, but they weren't interested. And for whatever reason, that's what it is. And we can't give money back. It's not that we don't want to set a precedent. We can't afford to. We don't have the money to give back.
I understand.
And it wouldn't work.
Okay.
And by the way, they didn't complete their contract. They were supposed to give us another $25,000, which they never gave us. So we looked at it kind of like they've got part of their money back. And,
you add that, and just for clarity, I read repeatedly that Midland Medical, which becomes CAN, made a multiple-year commitment to. Did they do that?
Both of them did, yeah.
Yeah, and that is off.
I would absolutely assume so.
Yeah.
I haven't called to respond to that.
Yeah,
so,
okay, all right. Other debt that we've read about that I want to get, I want to hear your answer, or your explanation about.
Sure.
I hear former executive director Kevin Clevenger is owed money. Is that true?
Absolutely not.
He is not owed any funds.
No, he received all of his, he received everything that he was supposed to receive. That all happened with our treasurer and with Morgan and Ashley still in place. We handled all that before, so he's been paid.
If anyone could see proof that it's being discussed in the month of May that debt is still owed, would that surprise you?
That is still owed to him? Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, it would surprise me. Absolutely.
It would surprise you. Okay, fine.
And if anybody would like to show me, I mean, I would like to know what it's for. It may be a discussion as to how much he thought he was supposed to receive, and compared to, and this is because he would receive I don't want to call it a bonus, but it was like a bonus for bringing in certain sponsors. So, and we had that as part of our, which we probably won't do that again, but we had that in the how you call it, in the contract with him, but he put in the contract, he miscalculated one that had already been paid that was taken out. So things like that. So it wasn't far off from what he originally assumed he was supposed to get, but no, and he's never said anything. He should have said something if he had a problem with it.
Okay, he has not spoken to you that any money is owed to him?
No, he has not contacted me or Ashley or Morgan that I know of with Ashley and Morgan for me, for sure.
Yeah, okay, I understand. And to close the conversation about money, any other debts that you're aware of?
Yeah, absolutely. We took out a loan so that we could pay the Convention and Visitors Bureau back. We took out a loan with the SBA because it was the only time that we'd be able to do it. We wanted to make sure that the Convention and Visitors Bureau, our Visit Lauderdale, knew that we were committed to paying them back, because what they originally had was a 3-year deal where we paid them back so much at the end of each year. That would have been devastating this past year. So I'm happy that we did it this way, but now we have 30 years to pay that off.
Yeah, so you've taken an SBA loan for the $250,000.
For I think 200 actually.
Okay, for 200. Okay, so they've been paid 50.
They've been paid. No, they've already been paid everything.
Yeah. But 200 of it came because of the SBA loan.
Yes, correct.
And Pride Fort Lauderdale can pay off the SBA loan over 30 years. Okay, I understand. I haven't heard that before.
But it makes sense, because the fact is that if we had to have a $50,000 balloon payment here or whatever, we did pay them half to begin with, but pay it back. But it just made more sense for us financially to be able to stretch that over time.
Yeah. Okay. We're bursting bubbles for queer people all over that are listening to us that think Pride just is unicorns and rainbows.
I wish. Something? No, it is. Let me not say that. It really is. This is not a big deal.
Okay.
At the end of the day, people are going to disagree. When you walked out to Pride this year, you had to feel a magic. My mom, 77 years old, the first time she's ever been to a Pride.
Yeah.
Do you know how that felt for me?
Yeah.
And how other people have that feeling? Yeah. That's what Pride's about.
Yeah. Not an SBA loan.
It's not an SBA loan.
You're correcting me. Al, you're concentrating on the wrong thing.
But somehow you're a great guy and you're a news guy, and I appreciate you. But I also want people to know that above and beyond all of this, we all have hearts. Yeah. And we all care about this immensely.
Yeah, let's talk about you. The other thing that I continually read and hear about is that you loaned $89,000 to Pride, and you paid it on your credit cards. Is that true?
So what happened is we were about 3 weeks away from, or maybe even longer, before our event. We didn't have enough money to pay for everything that was going to come up. And you have a big lump sum that you have to pay to Boy George. Then we have other staff and stuff that you have to have liquidity for. I brought it up to the board and I said, listen, the last thing I want to do is ruin my financial future, but I know that we're going to make the money back, door revenue from the bars. We're going to make it back. And also, I don't want to see us not have a pride. We've gotten this far. It's just, it would be ridiculous. And then let's be honest, logically, it made no sense. If we had to cancel Pride, we'd have to give all the money back, and we didn't have the money to give back everything. So I said, are you okay with me using my credit cards to pay it back? So I charged $89,000 onto my credit cards, and thank God, everything worked out fine, and each of the credit cards was paid directly back from the Pride bank account. For that and everything, all the bills and everything.
Let me make sure that I've got this right. So you're going into Pride of the Americas, Pride Fort Lauderdale in February. There is great risk in terms of the amount of revenue capable. You're faced the choice of cancellation, the possibility of cancellation. So you have put $89,000. The board knew this.
They agreed. It was voted on and it was approved.
Yeah.
It would have never happened if not. Yes.
Okay. The board voted on the allocation of the money from your credit cards, and the $89,000 was repaid to you.
Was repaid directly to the credit card company. So I don't want anything.
You weren't even the middle person.
Yes. I don't want anything to do with me.
Yeah. So if it's Bank of America, they were directly paid.
Correct.
And you're not owed any money at this point by Pride Fort Lauderdale.
So that I make this abundantly clear, anything that I bring to Pride, I never ask for. I never get a reimbursement. I never ask for it. Anything that comes with printing is all donated for free from my company. I do not want there to ever be a doubt that
You're heard.
It's just because you see what happens.
Now let me do which is what I'm getting ready to do. Let me do the news guy further, because I want to hear your opinion on it. Multiple sources, including 2 former board members, have said, unnamed sources, say specifically that you had requested that no questions be asked from the board on how the money was spent. Is that true?
I'm trying to think.
Were there strings or conditions on the $89,000? It's basically what they're saying. You can't ask me how I'm going to spend the $89,000.
Well, first of all, I didn't know what it was going to be. It could have been $15,000. So, no, I don't ever remember. That never happened. There was never a question about that. The only thing that ever happened when it came to discussing things is following our bylaws, which we tried to do. And there is only one person that's allowed to speak to the press, and that was me. Evidently, that didn't happen. And whoever on our board that did that, or whoever it was that discussed that, obviously got incorrect. And that's the reason we have this, because of situations like this. And it never happened.
Yeah. Okay. And
there's a receipt for everything. It matches up beautifully with everything. So I should have brought the folder.
Okay. Yeah. And all of this is available, public records. You're a 501c3 or Pride. If they wanted to see it, they could. The other thing that I'm curious in terms of the personal reaction from you, all of this malaise coming out of Pride of America, Pride of the Americas, the money from Visit Lauderdale, the refund to Visit Lauderdale, all of the related issues, the second quarter and third quarter issues with the board of people that came in that may have been trying to pursue various things, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You can at least understand why there would be so much what's going on. And as it relates to money, you can understand why people
I'm not mad because somebody asked questions. I'm mad when you spend 48 minutes on the phone with somebody a couple of times and they still don't use the information that you told them. That's very disrespectful. Yeah. And that $89,000, I spoke to a reporter about that a couple of months ago, and it never got mentioned. And I think that should show when it comes to the word of being accountable. That's accountability.
Yeah, and because I'm in that bucket too. I'm going to talk about the media in a minute, but I want to finally move to this transparency issue about moving forward. Are there any other related finance issues at Pride Fort Lauderdale that I should be asking you about or you want to discuss? Anything else that I haven't asked about?
The only thing that we're trying to do is find revenue streams. We go out and sell flags. We did it in Miami Beach. We brought in, great revenue from doing that. We're going to go do it again in Dallas. I know we did last year. Kevin was out there. He sold everything we brought, which was great. We're going to do that again this coming up year. We're going to be in Minneapolis. But again, all these are frequent flyer miles and stuff. So
I understand.
And it gets our executive director, who is already known by all these organizations anyway. It gets him out there and helps.
Let's talk about some relationships. First, let's talk about a relationship with the city of Fort Lauderdale. And I want to ask you about that because Fort Lauderdale is a city and Pride Fort Lauderdale are so intricately linked to make the Pride celebration important. And I want to ask about Fort Lauderdale. SFGN and John Hayden talked to Fort Lauderdale's gay mayor, Dean Trentellis, about Pride, and he seemed to express concerns. He said, I believe, just last week, quote, they are completely on their own. I don't understand what happened. What concerns me is that the group has disintegrated. Hopefully by this time next year, we will be able to see a reconstituted board with a lot of energy, end quote. What do you think about the mayor's comment?
I think he is giving us positive feedback, believe it or not, because he sees that he's trying to put positivity out in the atmosphere, and I agree with him. We're going to have a completely different group next year. We're going to have a group of experienced people, a fantastic executive director. Really, it's going to be an amazing event. I think what's different this time is we have people who have heart, who have been part of Pride for many years. It's really easy to put on an event when you have people that are like-minded, that we're trying to achieve the same goals.
And without going into the what's next, because we're going to talk about that, you, in terms of relationship with Fort Lauderdale, you're happy where it's at. You're not concerned about how the city is treating Pride Fort Lauderdale, the LGBTQ community.
Oh my God, I've said this. I go around the country telling people how fortunate we are to live in Fort Lauderdale. How fortunate we are. To have this in Fort Lauderdale, have the people behind us. They've been nothing but amazing every step of the way. They're caring, they're helpful. You just I can't even begin to tell you how fortunate we are to be where we are. And even if there are issues, we'll work them out because they're nothing that is just misunderstandings. I don't think we have any though. We've booked our dates 2 months ago with them, and they didn't tell us.
About that.
Yes, I'm just saying.
Yeah.
So,
okay. All right. I'll come back to that. Also, let's talk about the relationship with Visit Lauderdale. Pride Fort Lauderdale and Visit Lauderdale is a symbol of LGBT travel to the gayest place on planet Earth. Richard Gray is an Out 100 recipient, the only travel-related recipient in Out's history of that prestigious award.
It's amazing.
And it's a reflection of Fort Lauderdale and Broward County and Visit Lauderdale. What is the current relationship with Pride and Visit Lauderdale?
Let me put it this way. First of all, for both Fort Lauderdale and for Visit Lauderdale, we haven't started our sponsorships yet, so we're starting now, but we haven't started them yet. So we can't tell you if they're going to be on board, but we will be calling them, and we hope that they will be, because I'm not going to predict anything. But they've been amazing. Stacy and Richard, from top to bottom, they've always looked out for us. They've given us feedback that we couldn't receive anywhere else. They're marketing marvels. So if anything we want is to have a great relationship with them. It's not just their money, it's what they bring to the picture. And so we've had a good relationship, and so far, everything seems to be going in that same direction.
Do you, I have to get it out on the table.
Sure.
Do you have any regrets that Visit Lauderdale was one of the biggest, perhaps the biggest cheerleader for Pride of the Americas? And as a result, if that wouldn't have been true, maybe we would have never tried to take on Pride of the Americas. Any disappointment in that?
No, I think what the disappointment was when you have a lot of one organization putting in a lot to help you, you kind of still need to realize that things can happen and you're going to need more sponsors. And I think we should have been, because we tried to work with the sponsorship coordinator a couple of years ago and that didn't work out. So I think we should have moved the date back and tried one more time to get it right. But other than that, they're amazing. And I'm so appreciative and thankful that they've been supportive of not just us, but everybody in our community.
You know, at the end of the day, support of Pride Fort Lauderdale, opposition to Pride Fort Lauderdale as its relationship in representing this city and this county. I talk to people all over the world, and if I've said once, I've said literally 100 times, Visit Lauderdale, and Broward County and Fort Lauderdale is the best LGBTQ plus travel destination in the world. Period.
No doubt.
Drop mic.
No doubt. You can't really. I mean, and I'm not trying to be disrespectful to any other city or anything, but listen, regardless of what happens with in our environment with the state and with the governor, they're still putting their neck out for us. I mean, look at I was going to say our vice mayor, but what he's done for us, and just speaking out. Yeah. I'm afraid to speak out, to be honest with you, because if he'll go after Disney, I'm nobody.
Yeah, right.
I'm not even a Mickey Mouse.
Right. Well, join us at Queer News tonight. All right. Well, let's move on and let's discuss. You've seeded it already in the interview, your new executive director.
Yes.
I understand that there is a new executive director coming for Pride Fort Lauderdale, and his name is Ernie Ewan.
Correct.
Ernie Ewan. Is he officially the new executive director?
Yes. He's been our executive director. He was voted on by the board that was before, for what was it? I guess 2 months ago, something like that, and 2 or 3 months ago. And he flies in on my frequent flyer miles every 2 weeks, stays here for a couple of weeks, stays with my mom.
He's in Vegas.
Yes, he lives in Vegas right now. He's going to be moving.
Yeah.
But Ernie's had 19 years of experience with nonprofits, spending quite a bit of it as the executive director, president, and then executive director of Las Vegas Pride. He works with Electric Daisy Carnival, EDC. He does high-end weddings. He knows events, and he knows sponsorships.
Yeah.
And to be quite honest with you, he's been our mentor for many years. If you looked at our bylaws, you probably saw something by accident that was in there that says Las Vegas, because we
copy and paste it.
Yes, well, I tried.
Yeah.
We got as much as we could out, but Ernie, he's the fact that he's willing to stay in somebody's house to try to help us.
Yeah.
And I mean,
when will he start full time?
He's full time, but he comes in and stays here 2 weeks and then goes back, but he's still working.
Okay. And when
remotely.
is he moving? When is he planning?
Hopefully September.
Yeah.
So, because it's going to take time. He's been there for many years.
Okay.
Yes. And he's Hawaiian, which Pacific Islander. So again, I like the fact of
diversity.
The diversity.
Yeah.
And he speaks from a different place, which might be really exciting.
It will. We're going to talk more about it. As for your reaction, it will not surprise you. We're LGBT after all, so there's various opinions.
Yeah.
And in Reach Out, Ernie, as Mike said, is in Las Vegas, and worked for Las Vegas Pride for years.
Mm-hmm.
This week, there is the inaugural edition of Out South Florida, which is the inclination of the evolution from SFGN. And they have an interview with John Hayden and the current president of Las Vegas Pride, Brady McGill. He expresses concern on the hire at Pride Fort Lauderdale. And he said, this is coming from the article that has been published, quote, Ernie tends to play the role of expert, which is dangerous when you're working with tax codes. There are places where you take on more than you should. There should be CPAs. I don't think Ernie Ewan should be in charge of a nonprofit. I would tell them to watch their backs. Over the years, he made a lot of enemies and doesn't have a big fan club, end quote. Now, I don't know him. I don't know any of these details. I'm curious with your eye and your seat of your knowledge at Pride Fort Lauderdale and Las Vegas and around the country. What's your reaction to that? Is that fair?
I know Brady. I also know that Brady and him had some disagreements. So, God bless Brady. I think he's wrong. And I would be happy and probably will tell him, call him up and tell him myself. I think it's wrong because, ironically, when I was there and volunteered many times, it was one of the most organized parades, if not the most I've ever seen in my life. That was just one of the multiple roles. He has a way of bringing people together. He has a way of bringing groups together and creating this really wonderful working group that was there, and it felt like a family instead of an organization. That's pretty substantial. And people, just like Kevin, by the way, Kevin and myself and many others were, Rocky Bowell, who was with our group, Sean Manning, Sean Palacios, all of us absolutely adore him. He is a great guy. If Brady had a problem, God bless him, I hope everything's fine with him. I completely disagree with him. And I guess I'm going to have, with the new publication, more John Hayden stories. And I would like to say, bless his heart.
Yes.
Bless his heart.
All right. I'm a Southerner, so I know what that means.
Yeah,
all right.
Me too.
So I'm looking forward to a meeting, or I have not. It gives us a good transition to talk about the blame game. Yes. It's something that goes on in LGBT in so many fashions. The things that have been said about me over the years, just wait. Believe me, I know exactly this environment. But let's discuss the blame
That's true.
game.
You probably do.
I do. I want to take a moment to talk about you personally and your personal feelings as being president of Pride Fort Lauderdale. These grand plans of Pride of the Americas, being president of Pride Fort Lauderdale, everybody that left seems to be talking about you, and some of them are blaming you for Pride Fort Lauderdale. Some in the community are blaming you for the issues that have taken place from Pride of the Americas to today. What do you think about all of that, of people talking about this behind your back, anonymous sources, both in social media and in official press? What do you think about that?
Well, I think it's to be expected from somebody who was on the board before to not be happy that things didn't go their way, and to have a little bit of, have something to say about it. I don't want to be upset with anybody. Just because two people don't see things the same way doesn't mean that we have to hate each other or that it makes us bad. We just see things differently. And it's my opinion that there were things that we could have done better. I'm one of those people that want us to stick to the rules. And I mean, if I told you some of the things that were being brought out there about, not having contracts and things like that. I mean, these are things that we all should be voting on contracts. We should know what our expectations are. And this is what some of the board members wanted. It doesn't make sense to me. Oh, you're just trying to micromanage. Well, micromanage or manage. Manage is the word I was looking at. And it's sad, but it's okay. I just hope that I wish them the best, and I hope that they will still have, they'll wish us and wish Pride the best in the future. That's my hope.
I've asked this question 25 times. Why don't they come out and speak on record? Why don't they do that?
Even if they did, and I'm not trying to, but even if they did come out, it could still be a difference of opinion.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they could come out and say anything they want, just like I can. I think that when you hear both sides, you're better informed. Mm-hmm. I know what happened. I speak way too much. I love to talk, but I also love to make people happy. So the last thing I want to do is upset people. I don't want them to be upset with me. I don't like having enemies. I don't like having negativity. I want us to all be able to come back next year and fly rainbow flags or trans flags or whatever and just be happy.
Mm. I said we're delving here at the end about the personal. It's 5 years, 5 years since the loss of World Pride and the creation of Pride of the Americas and everything in transition that we saw leading to February. I ask you, did you like it? And
actually did like the Pride. I'm going to be honest with you. I liked when people walked in, they got to see a history of the different Pride flags. That was something I wanted to do for a long time. Ernie made that happen.
Yeah.
The different trans history. It was like we tried to do things that really added some educational aspect to it.
Yeah.
And then the event itself.
You may be answering the question faster than I asked.
I'm sorry.
Because at the end of the day, all of the issues of these transitions and pandemics and the fights and the board attempts of whatever that was and the money and executive directors and aren't you tired of it all?
Are you asking me whether I'm going to stay?
No.
No. I'm tired of unnecessary drama, but I'm also not a quitter. And it's not about whether it's me. It's about the situation we're in. I could say, throw my hands up in the air and go, okay, I'm done, and close it down.
And
some people,
why not do that? Why not just go, this is just
And
too
some
much.
people close down organizations when the chips are stacked against them. But this is a 47-year-old organization, or we're going in our 47th year. Who am I to make that? And it's not going to go down under my watch. We want to hit 50. We're an important part of our community. We were around when Anita Bryant that's how we started, because of Anita Bryant. Save Our Children. Oh my goodness, we have a similar Save Our Children thing going on right now. Are we going to let our current governor be a winner by seeing us fail and go down? No, we have a lot to be here for. And we are a good organization with really good people that care. And by the way, just because the board is small, there's still all the other people, the volunteers, there's all the staff. There's hundreds of people that make this happen.
It gives us a perfect opportunity to discuss your future as president of Pride. I assume you're not going anywhere?
I have to finish getting a group together. At some point, I'm not going to be here forever, and I'm not attempting to be here forever. I actually was considering leaving last year. So, this would have been my last year, but obviously things changed.
One of the things that, the rumor stuff about you, one of the things that I've heard repeatedly is that you actively own big portions of the infrastructure, websites or branding or imaging or fill in the blank, whatever it is. Is that true?
Well, let me be clear. I do have things that I bought that I donate for Pride to use. But I also house, not as much as I used to, I house a lot of the stuff that Pride rents out. Like, for example, we rent out coolers. Because we make money on those coolers, they offset our cost. It lowers what our costs are. We owned tablecloths at one time. We had the bars.
So what you're saying is people are confusing the mixture of Planet Printer and storage space, etc.
Well, the storage space, I separated that now. It's just, because I honestly would like to wanted it out of my warehouse because it was taking up a tremendous amount of space, and we have a really big spot that actually Kevin found, and it's a great spot. The problem though is that the coolers are going to be hard to fit in there because there's 30 of them, or 20 of them, so that's a lot. But still, we make revenue off of that. Pride makes revenue off of that.
So
and I don't have to pay for the stuff that I have myself that I donate.
Yeah.
But I think that's great.
Yeah, I understand. We're discussing what happens next. So you're not going anywhere. You're reconstituting a board. Pride's going to come back. It'll be the 48th, and you've got to get it to 50 or 47. Okay.
Yeah, because 27.
Okay.
What is it?
All right.
2026 is the.
And you've told us you want to get it to 50. I do definitely want to talk about the future. Let's break the news. Either way, I have absolutely no idea. But sources say that the dates have been set with the city of Fort Lauderdale for dates for Pride Fort Lauderdale 2024. Is that true?
Well, I'm going to be the verifiable source here. Yes. Yes, we are absolutely going to be February 9th, 10th, and 11th. We're going to introduce a night parade, which I wasn't going to tell you that until now, but now you know. I was going to wait a little bit, but we're going to have a night parade again, so hopefully that'll be exciting. And one of the days is going to focus just on the parade and a street festival, similar to what we did the first time.
And the parade is going to be where?
Same place, A1A.
Yeah.
The park. We're going to be in the park probably one more year at Ocean or not Oceanside Park, but the other park, Las Olas Intracoastal Promenade Park. Yeah.
Promenade, right?
So we're going to be at that park this coming up here. We have to figure out how we can move back to being on the beach, because as long as the cost of the parking, we have to use that. Unfortunately, we have to use the parking, quite a bit of it. So it makes it really hard. Some events don't really need the parking, but we actually utilize a lot of it. So we'll have to figure out a way through that.
Yeah, and so the festival is going to be 2 days. The platform for the weekend is going to be similar to what we saw this year, except the parade moves as to a nighttime function.
To a nighttime function, it will be on a separate day. The parade will be Saturday, and then Sunday will be the festival. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
And then there will be a Friday night.
Are you excited about that?
Yeah, I am. I mean, I really like that year. For one, I mean, it was hard this year because we don't get to actually sit out and help the parade. We don't get to actually produce it. When we're there and we don't have to worry about the festival going on at the same time, it makes it a lot easier. So, and I think it's going to be fun. It's Noche de Carnaval Parade. That's what it's going to be called, and it is. And again, it's going to be really exciting. And we're going back to our Love Pride theming, which was really fun and amazing.
So February 9th to the 11th, 2024, featuring a Saturday night parade on Gay 1A. Yeah. Right. Okay. Very exciting. Last thing, I'm curious.
You did say there's other things coming up before then. That's 2024. We have the 14th, Wednesday, June 14th, our first drag charity bingo, and that's going to be at the Pride Center. And then we're going to have it once a month, the first Thursday of every month from there on.
So the plan in terms of fundraising and visibility is to do things through the year and have events. Will you be doing Halloween again?
We're not sure. I'm not going to say we're not. We haven't really put that planned out, but we have something coming up very soon before that. On the 30th of September, we're going to have Pride Pets. And so Pride Pets is going to be it's going to be an event that focuses on the wonderful pets that bring us joy every day. And we're going to engage pet rescues and other pet-oriented businesses to be there. And it'll be a place that you can bring your pets to, which I think it'll be a lot of fun.
Well, I now know that Mike Martorell is staying on as president of Pride Fort Lauderdale because he's going to try to jam into every single event over the next 12 months in this interview.
We have to.
I know.
We have more. No, there's so much more.
We'll be talking about all of that on Queer News Tonight, at Hotspots Magazine, so many other places. I guess last question for you. I'm curious for you in terms of what you've gone through, at least in the last year. And then, by the way, there was pandemic before that. What have you learned through all of this?
I've learned that as much as I want to believe that people are innately good, that they're not always innately good, and you have to trust your gut. I really do give people the benefit of the doubt way too often, and for me that's a problem. What I know I'm going to do now is I'm going to trust my gut. I'm going to stick with the people that have proven themselves to be good, and make sure that, I'm not going to feed negative energy or negative people, and we're going to have an amazing event. But personally, it hurt. It really did hurt to have so many people let you down, but that's okay because we have an amazing year ahead, and this is part of the learning process, Yeah.
Well, one thing is clear in my conversation with Pride Fort Lauderdale's president, Mike Martorell. We are living in challenging times with a presidential candidate that is trying to erase our community. It seems to me we can't turn and eat on our own, and I think that's what I just heard. But that does not mean the only LGBTQ plus news is good news, because it isn't. It's just news. And we can't be a great LGBTQ community if we only want to report on great news. Understand the difference. Supporting the LGBTQ plus community is reasonable and measured critique, factual, accurate, fair. I will broadcast the Stonewall Pride Parade next month, in June Pride Month, as it faces so many critical issues beyond whether we hold the largest queer festival in Florida. Pride of the Americas is finished, both as a concept and in its results. Our need now is for Pride Fort Lauderdale in South Florida, and it is not finished. Perhaps we will remember this and use today's conversation as a starting point to achieve that goal for 2024. Mike Martorell, thank you very much for joining us at Unapologetically Queer.
Thank you so much, Al, for allowing me to be here. I really do appreciate it.
LGBTQ plus news is vital for our community and for the broader world as a whole. We have enough enemies at Fox News. Tucker, Sean, and Lara are loud. We need passionate allies. Happening Out Television Network, Queer News Tonight, and It's Happening Out are literally out of the closet and into the headlines. Our community needs your support. Like this broadcast and subscribe now to ensure the growth of the entire LGBT